How's New Year's?
You missed it?
I missed New Year, I was sick.
Oh, you poor
I went to
guy.
sleep Saturday morning, I woke up Monday night. Best thing I ever did though.
Mm-hmm.
Kicked it real fast.
Okay, good.
I stayed away from everybody too. Christmas was great.
Cool.
Christmas rocked. And you know what, if I had the choice,
Yeah, I didn't do much.
Christmas over any day.
Yeah, I didn't
don't
do
feel
it.
like I missed anything.
I didn't do
It
much.
was
of
actually a
anything.
pretty good weekend, we sat on the couch watching football.
Right, okay, cool.
Peter, if you call in Corey, you want, I can go ahead.
I just sent him a text.
That way you're not involved. Let's see what everybody else wants to do.
Yeah, I mean,
John,
well,
now.
I mean, I can do notes, but technically I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
Right?
Anybody else not coming?
Well, Kelly stepped down.
Oh, did she?
How are you?
So you have two spots open.
Yeah, three on,
Nice spots.
Sure.
No, I thought it was elementary, but I remember everything else that you don't have. Kind of like you don't plan, they go together, yeah.
Yeah.
Overheard a few people are not going to, right?
Yeah.
You should.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
I haven't seen much advertising.
I guess we're just waiting on Corbett, so we'll wait a couple minutes.
Good.
I mean, our CAC was going, ACES, I guess, they went out
Aces.
on social media and so forth. They've
Yeah.
got a bunch of people for the first time.
Yeah, they did a nice job with it.
But what am I going to? They still can't get a quorum.
Yeah.
It's another story.
Yeah, I've not heard from Corbett.
Susan, you have an agenda?
No, I don't.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, well, we'll call to order this meeting in PROSTAC, January 17th, 2018. Not present are Corbett, and then Corey will be calling in as soon as he has a connection to do so.
Snapping it.
Yeah, he's gonna try. All right, so we're going to start with the amenities priority list really quick, and then we'll get into the indoor space. Jim, you wanted to wait until the topic to comment, so we'll allow that. So with the amenities priority list, all we really need to do tonight is decide, is there anything we want to add or delete from the list? And then once we have the list ready, we'll do it between this meeting and the next individually. So at this point, you know, there's a couple items, namely skate park and pickleball, which are in the budget for this year, but generally we've left items on until they're completed. So I would leave skate park and pickleball on for the time being.
What does STC stand for again? Potential.
Superior Town Center.
Oh, okay, that's right, thank you.
Which they now call Downtown Superior.
So it seems like the outdoor pool for Superior Town Center would be not likely to happen if the sports stable rec center plan went through.
Well, in that location, unless, you know, the developer decided that he wanted to put it somewhere else. But yeah, at this time, they haven't proposed anywhere else. I mean, they haven't even really proposed at the sports stable. I think that was only if the town was gonna pay for it, right?
Well, I guess given that it scored a low, I'm not sure there's any real reason to take it off or take anything off until we get farther down with planning for things that are actually going to get done. I guess I'm not sure what the purpose would be for taking things off unless there's clearly something
Well,
that's-
unless we clearly thought there was a sentiment not to have it anymore.
Oh.
You know, like number 9, outdoor teen amenity non-skate park. That was put on there a few years ago because of one committee member. It's so vague. I mean, there's no, it doesn't, that's like saying, you know, like the town should get a dog, okay? Like, for what purpose and what kind? I mean, it's so unspecific. I wonder if it really has a place on this list. I mean, if we have a specific idea as an outdoor teen amenity that's not a skate park, sure, I can see adding that to the list. But this like general placeholder,
I would agree with that. What is that far right column where it's got an X?
target for the coming year.
So for me, what that means is, I don't think it's an amenity. I think that's a focus. If we're looking at the priorities, then, you know, maybe we look at something that is not specified for kids, because a lot of the stuff is playground specified for kids. So it's an area of focus, but not an amenity itself.
Well, right. It's more just saying this is an area where
It's a constraint. It's a constraint.
Yeah. I mean, we're acknowledging the need for it, but we don't know what that need is, or that we know what the need is. We don't know what the solution is, and so to just have a placeholder in there without ever coming up with an idea to actually build, I don't.
No, it's a guideline.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, now's the opportunity. If someone can think of an amenity that could take this, the place of this, serve the need, then we could add it. But, I mean, we can't just say build a shopping mall. I mean, that's your
Build a free
teen amenity, right?
Well, teen amenity is a free phone park.
Cell phone chargers.
There you
like,
go.
Video games.
Yeah, Wi-Fi, like hotspot.
In my day, that would have been a dance hall for you.
You would.
Sorry, I'm aging myself.
Well, we put I know we put the BVSD cooperative effort, but that's really gone nowhere.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
It's pretty much, and I mean, I know that Fairview's got a ton of money coming this year. I don't know where El Dorado sits on that. I know they built a bunch of, done a lot of stuff up there lately, but
The last
that wasn't one of it.
Yeah, the last conversation we had is they weren't interested in the turf field split but there was maybe some interest in us funding to redo the fields and then get to some kind of agreement where we get the primary use. So I think it's still out there.
Okay.
It
So-
just hasn't had a lot of progress.
Let me ask a clarifying question. This is an amenities priority list, but like Peter was just suggesting, some of the stuff on here is not really amenities, it's focus. It's guidelines for focus on amenities, right? I mean, even like the number 5, the BVSD cooperative effort, to me, that's not an amenity. That's do we want to do something with them on these things, but it's not an amenity in and itself. It's a where do we want to look at for potential amenities? Outdoor team, another potential amenity. Where do we want to focus our efforts on? It's a guideline and constraint document type thing.
Yeah, it was just an opportunity for another field, is basically what it was. And it's been on there since I've been here, so. So it is, I would clarify that more of than the beach as a, I mean, the one right below it. I don't know where that's at now that they got sold, and we probably haven't even discussed it, so.
I reached out probably 2 years ago and
Yeah.
there was no interest.
Yeah, I don't see why
But,
we would leave that one on.
All right, some of these
Yeah.
things that, if there's actually no hope in doing it,
Exactly.
why even keep it there? Why
Right.
don't you just say, no?
Yeah, I think we can get rid of 5 and 6 just because we've got 5 covered with 4. It's the same principle. Now, we may
Yeah.
want to leave that on there just in case, as a
I mean,
placeholder.
5 has been an actively discussed opportunity.
Right, many times, but,
And it is different than 4, because
Correct.
you're talking about a specific location being El Dorado School.
right.
But what's the amenity?
The
A
field.
field.
Just a sports field,
Well, it's, okay.
TBD for you, for what sport?
It's actually a program sports field, is what it
Yeah,
is.
that's
Okay,
what-
so the amenity itself is a program sports field,
Yep,
and how you access that is through cooperation with BVSD.
correct.
Yeah.
So right now it's.
Maybe we need to reword this, because it doesn't read as an amenity.
Okay, that's fine, yeah. It's a good idea.
Should we just go down the list, like top to bottom, see if there's majority to consensus to remove any items or modify?
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
So I think the first 3 are solid, right?
Yeah,
Those aren't
first
going anywhere.
4 are solid.
Okay. So we could start on number 5, which looks like it's,
Being adjusted.
right. So that one's probably good to go, right?
And 6, yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what lake that even is over there.
There's a big
There's
lake.
a lake that sits just to the southeast corner of
If
the
you stand on the
apartments.
tennis court.
You know where they're
look
building
right over it.
like those townhomes, like on that lot that's at the corner where the
Oh,
mall
that
is.
Yes.
It's that those townhomes are going to be right on the other side of the lake. So
Oh,
the
okay,
lake is like
okay.
between the townhomes and the apartments.
It's across from like
Okay.
Firestone or whatever.
Got
I
it,
thought
got it.
that referred to the beach actually at the apartments.
Yeah.
Correct.
It was.
Well, it is
um,
specifically, but she's asking where the
Yeah, I thought that was, I
It's
thought
south
that
of the
was just for the
apartments.
apartments,
It is currently.
but, okay.
Given that's a private entity,
Yeah.
Right.
I don't
Yeah,
see-
that seems,
you ask them and they say no. The only thing you can do is ask them every year,
Hmm.
but that's
Or-
all you can do is just put that on your, hey, can we ask them for this? They say no every year.
Or
Yeah, and we-
remove it and wait until they ask.
Yeah, and we normally do.
If they
We-
do.
But there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, and the school, the conversation with the school on the fields is kind of the same
Same way.
thing.
Right, it's a, can we? No, all right, done.
it's,
Should we adjust it to a low then, or if we want to keep it on the list?
Well,
or-
but do we, I guess my question is do we have a, I hate having more stuff, but is there a certain thing, maybe a list or a certain thing that you say, we ask this question to these entities every year, and depending on their answer, whether or not we add them to the list? Because if they tell us no every year, then it makes no sense to have them on the list because you're never gonna get that thing. Can you have a, beginning of every year, you
Just
just.
put them at the bottom of the list or something, as things you want to continue to
You want
pursue.
to
We did
continue to
talk
ask, but you can't control.
Yeah, well, the only thing I'll say is when when the trustees met with the school board, we did talk to them about the cooperative effort on the school, and they didn't say no. So, maybe you were pursuing it through the wrong avenue. Maybe if you guys were to push the trustees and then we push the school board,
Well, are we asking the right question?
yeah, I mean,
What are we asking them literally? Are we saying, do you guys want to cooperate? Because, from my experience, if you go up to somebody and say, we would like to cooperate, we would like to use your field for blah, 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 X, X, Y, Z, that helps us out in these things, would you, are you guys willing to do this type of thing? Versus hey, we would like to just be able to use your field at some time, some point for whatever. It's easy to say no in that, but if you have I would like it for specific reasons, and this is how it helps out the city and helps out the BVSD and helps out everybody, it's much easier to say yes. So what question are we asking?
So
more
we've,
specific than
yeah,
that.
we've actually
Yeah.
drafted up agreements, and
Okay.
even to we'll cover the cost, but it always comes down to us covering the cost
Okay.
and then not getting the equitable opportunity to use the field. But it comes up. I think it's on the list every year when the board meets for dinner,
right.
and I think the general gist was let them get through construction.
Yeah.
They do. I think they are planning to make some minor improvements to that their grass field, but it wasn't anything on the scale of what we were hoping.
I think there was one concept that was we would build the turf.
Yeah.
Because they have all the equipment to take care of all the turf. They would come through and
Yeah.
upkeep it. So
Right.
all we had to do was build it, they would upkeep it, and there would be a shared.
Yeah,
But that's not going to,
So Martin, assistant town manager, Martin Toth, manager Magley, myself, we met with the school superintendent, and they were reluctant to go with any type of turf field, just because that's not what they do at K-8s, and they're very, very, very aware of equitability. So they kind of scraped that off the table, and then we said, well, is there some kind of opportunity for us to upgrade the grass? And they said, well, maybe. And then it normally comes down to, well, you can upgrade it, but they get the first pick at it. And that's kind of where it's lying right now.
Have we thought along the lines of something maybe a little bit different in the sense that my kids go to El Dorado, and when my older son did track and field, none of that happened at El
Yep.
Dorado because there's nothing there,
Mhm.
right? We had to go to other schools all the time. Well, something larger like that with a field, maybe a track around it, now the school may be a little bit more amenable to that type of thing because now they can bring other schools in and they can start hosting some of these things versus always having to farm it out. So how do we play that as a win-win?
Well, the problem I really see is, for whatever reason, BVSD took a strong stance when they got the bond issue of, we're going to give every standalone middle school a
Mhm.
field.
Right.
And it's probably a field with a track.
It is.
They all
Yeah.
got them. All right.
But if you're a K through 8,
You didn't.
You didn't.
good luck. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to get it this round. So what you're going to get it in 10 years or never? It's-
And they made it, to Peter's point, they made it very clear that it is a blanketed policy. If you do it at one, they will do it at another one. But one K-8 or one middle school doesn't get an amenity that another one wouldn't. And I think that very much, so even in terms of, well, if the town paid for it, there's still this issue of you have one K-8 who
Right.
has an amenity that's different than another K-8. And then it comes down to usage. So, for instance, if the town wants to use Eldo K-8 or Superior, we actually don't get to go through the school. We have to go through, they have a whole department that, so the principals and the teachers actually don't have a say for what happens at their school extracurricularly. It's handled at another department. But yeah, we learned pretty quickly that it came down to this: if one gets one, the other one gets one. And we were even saying, well, maybe is there an opportunity that the town could carve out and take that land over, and the town own it? But I don't think we've fleshed that out very far.
So I don't know where that leaves us, if we want to remove it just because we don't think it's realistic,
So-
or are we still hopeful and therefore want it on the list?
I think we put it onto a separate list. That's the potential list that when we make the phone call every year with, I was going to say Horizons, Bell Flatiron, and the school, if there ever is a yes, then that gives them the opportunity to go on the list. But if it's a no when we make that phone call, then they stay off the list. Because
My only concern is the amenities list itself is kind of that reminder of what's possible. It is that year-to-year list that says, these are the things we're looking at. So if we remove something from this list, are we necessarily gonna be coming back to it in the
But
future?
the difference is the stuff on the list is stuff within the board's control. If the board says, I want a pickleball court, then they can add that amenity.
I
The board has
understand
no
that.
control over to say, I want to use Bell Flatiron's beach. So there's a difference of whether we can do it or can't do it depending on the board's direction versus what, that's the difference in those two, I guess.
No, I understand the difference. I'm just thinking, if it's not on the list, the board doesn't see it on the list, do they not recognize it as a potential opportunity?
But it's not a potential opportunity if the school or Bell Flatiron says
Well, right,
no at the
but
beginning.
it's
But I'm
only a
saying is-
potential opportunity. It's not a potential opportunity at all if we don't even bring it up anymore to
I guess what I'm saying is that
the other party.
maybe we do this smartly, is we have a list that we have these folks that we call and say, are you guys even amenable to this conversation this year? If the answer is no, then it doesn't go on the list. If the answer is yes, then it does go on the list. And then and maybe it's not this year, maybe it's in December, it's sometime before we present the amenities list to the board so that we know what factors are actually in play. But if we can have a conversation with them prior to sending this to the board and automatically remove that because they told us no, then I think that's beneficial, right?
I wouldn't remove it, I would just figure out a way to put it on the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
That's maybe inactive or something, non-votable, because this just goes out for us to vote on.
However we distinguish it,
Yeah,
right?
put it
I
down at
guess-
the bottom
yeah.
saying inactive, because no reason to put this high because it's inactive. And
Right, but just so that we don't keep doing this over and over, it sounds to me more like the school district thing, as Patrick described it, is a policy issue that we don't have a reason to think they're gonna change that from year to year.
yeah, it could change anytime,
So-
yeah, that's the.
Well,
And
okay.
I'm actually really good with the idea of maybe you have an active versus inactive list.
But still
And
on the
you,
list.
and you
Well, I-
verify the inactive resist to see if it goes back onto the active, something to distinguish it.
What I'm more hearing is just, we move it to the bottom of the list as like, kind of like a sub-table that we don't vote on these. Like, they're on there as potential items, but they are not ranked
Right,
alongside
focused on
the
ones.
other items because neither PROSTAC staff nor the board has any real control over these items proceeding because they involve partnerships with non-town.
yeah.
The only stipulation of that is somehow if that list is that we contact them prior to reprioritizing this list from year to year and determine is that still the case? Because if that ever changes, now you want to be able to
move it
put them
up.
to
Yeah.
a different status. That's the only stipulation I would have with that.
Well, we meet monthly, so that's nice.
Yeah.
It comes up and.
But we only present
Well,
this to them once, right?
Well,
Yeah,
right,
well-
but I almost think if you're gonna talk to these organizations each year, you almost do it more when you're discussing budget. Because, because if we went to Bell Flatirons and said, hey, do you wanna do this? If they say yes, we're probably gonna be well, then that needs to be in the next budget, like it needs to be acted on
Right.
immediately, because the window
Yes.
would close. You can't, if you put it on the list and rank it and then wait till the next year to go on the budget, you might be like 18,
100%
24
agree.
months out from when they said yes, and then they might not say yes anymore.
100% agree that you do it at the opportune time to make it playable. You just do it sometime ahead of the submission.
All right. So, continuing down, we've got tennis court, youth baseball field. I don't see either of those needing to be changed. I do think we need to remove outdoor teen amenity and wait until we have a specific item to replace it with.
So just
I'm in
to-
favor of that too.
Or rank it lower, yeah.
Well, just to that effect, because I agree it's not an amenity, do we have some kind of guidelines that's associated with this, that we have, a lot of communities say we want some kind of outdoor thing, so when we're actually ranking this, we use that as a consideration in the rankings, that, you know, folks say they want some kind of outdoor, so when we're looking at this entire list, if that's high on folks' list, we can say, oh, well, this is an outdoor, maybe not what, it's not identified, but this is an outdoor thing that may satisfy us, and it helps the guidelines of our ranking, because that's really what it does. It helps the guidelines of how we rank this from what the community says they need. So it's not an amenity in itself, but it influences how you pick the amenities.
Well, right. I think it is more a factor that we use in consideration
Right.
of other amenities.
Right, that's exactly what it is. How do you tie it to that? That's the question.
Well, I think that's just it. I don't think it really needs to be written down. It's just something that, you know, the committee members here, when we're thinking about an amenity, it's just one of those items that we're considering.
Well,
like, who does this serve? This amenity potentially serves teens who we know need, you know, some type of amenity, non-sport amenity, basically.
So the only question I have on that,
What?
and I know I'm dominating this conversation, I apologize, but so Jock comes onto this, this board, how does Jock know that that's a consideration if we pull it off and we don't have it written down someplace? How does he know that that's something that we really need to consider, that the community asked us to? If we pull it off the amenities list and we don't have it documented someplace that that's what they're looking for, not an amenity, but types of things they're looking for. How do we
Well,
document
right.
that?
I mean, that's a concern anytime you have new committee members. How long does it take them to get up to speed on the history of any of these items?
And I have to
Whether
apologize
it's
for
on the
denying-
list or not. I mean, you have, you know, history of existing items and understanding, you know, why certain amenities went at Wildflower Park and certain didn't, you know, and using that as a basis of knowledge for why, you know, a tennis court may not work anywhere else in town or something like, I mean, there's all kinds of knowledge like that that's unfortunately learned and not really something that you can research
But
by, I don't know.
maybe we can take a different approach. Maybe we should set up some time to figure out what a potential outdoor teen amenity we can come up with, and then see if that would be something that we can put somewhere in one of the new parks.
You know, and
because having there an outdoor amenity is okay.
It's something we could also just reach out to the Youth Advisory Council
Yeah.
on.
I think this is a great
That's
action for them.
true.
You
And
put this
have-
to- as an
and-
action.
yeah.
Please give us an amenity that you think
'Cause
that would work for this.
I know that, you know, having worked with them as well, that I think that they'd actually like the opportunity to weigh in and work with another committee and actually provide, instead of providing programs, they're a little program heavy,
Mhm.
which is good. I do know that they're eager to advise or give their input on something, which came up
So
the other Monday.
That's a great question.
So-
What is our ability to flow action items to other committees? Can we flow something to somebody? Say,
Yeah, you can
like
ask.
that. Say,
Mhm.
we would love
Absolutely.
For you to, maybe not giving it, force them to do something. But say, we would love for you to give us.
Absolutely.
Give us some ideas,
That would
yeah.
be outstanding.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you, at various times, I mean, especially when we were doing some of the early park naming stuff, a lot with the Historic Commission and, whether it's you attend a meeting or they attend a meeting or we work it through Kevin, who's their staff liaison. I just think it'd be a good opportunity for them, and maybe it's not a removed item. It's, we get their feedback. I know at one point we were looking at benches that you guys were kind of joking about the charging stations, but I actually think that amenity made it on there because we were looking at the benches that had the charging stations on them. So good opportunity to maybe get their input.
I guess I'd like to clarify too, though, for people who are more familiar with the origins of this than I am. Was it definitely that it had to be outdoor for teens, or was it more something for teens?
Well, I think the idea was that we weren't going to have an indoor space for such an amenity. So one thing we could do, because at the time this was put on before we did Wildflower Park, probably around the time we were doing Founders. So it's like I think the general idea was, can we get it in a park project? Because that was more realistic, whereas the indoor space has never caught enough ground to be like, oh, well, of course, if we have indoor space, then we should consider a teen amenity. But is that ever going to happen? We have a little bit more control over outdoor space.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it was as much of a reaction to the fact that almost every park in this town is addressed to little kids.
Right.
There's no real big
Yeah.
kid parks outside of maybe a couple swings at the schools. And I think that's kind of where this got generated, is we just didn't have a park for kids.
And that's why
older
the-
groups and younger groups, but the middle groups seem to be a little bit less down.
That's why the newer parks, we have made some effort to have, there's still playground features for the most part, but we have tried to make an effort of putting some amenities in there that skew a little bit older. So, slack lines at both Founders and Wildflower.
Right.
That
And
big
disc golf.
that big climbing pyramid at Wildflower. That's obviously not meant for toddlers. That's meant for your more probably like
Young
8
teens.
to 12-year-olds. And yes, it could entertain probably a 15-year-old that's fooling around. But
I would argue basketball courts and volleyball courts and those types of things are.
well,
for
but
older
that's the
folks.
thing
Well-
is
For older
we were
kids, too.
trying to look for non-sports
Yeah.
amenities because we knew that skate park, basketball court, those type of things would satisfy the need of mostly boys, but not necessarily as many girls.
Right.
What amenity could you have that serves the more general teen that isn't a sport? That was the idea that this came from.
Haven't you seen, I've noticed that like in Purple Park, there's, I think it's a volleyball court or.
The sand volleyball court,
sand
and there's
volleyball.
now one at Wildflower.
And usually if you pass by there's a bunch of teenagers. And I think-
A lot of early 20-somethings, like college-age kids, use the sand volleyball court too in the summer.
But, I mean, I kind of disagree with having something that is not sports related at all, because something that is kind of social, like volleyball, even if you don't play volleyball, it kind of tends to attract them to that area, because otherwise, what do you do?
What do you do?
Benches around the.
Sit on a
That-
boat.
so that was also part of this whole thing, was an amenity that's not just like the girls sitting around while the boys like play. That was, yes.
But that's kind of old too. I mean, girls do a lot of things now. Too.
They do.
I mean, I understand.
No,
I
they do.
agree with you.
I
that
agree
they
with
won't
you.
do like hockey or something like that, but like something
Yeah.
social, kind of volleyball or.
That's,
I don't know,
you're
basketball.
hitting the exact point of why we have never come up with an amenity that actually satisfies the history of this line item.
It's
So-
like I understand the focus, but I'm having a hard time coming up with a specific outdoor team
Yeah.
idea.
So I would
Because
really love to
benches,
hear
we
from
have benches
them.
on the park, so.
I would love to hear their brainstorming, because I have a feeling they're frame of reference is
Exactly.
very different from ours.
That's a good point, because I think that
So I
the
think it's
youth
a great
council.
idea to ask the youth council and say,
Yeah, they might make some headway where we have not.
Yep.
They might come up with some ideas that we have not been able to come up with, so.
Okay.
Pickleball, like I said, we'll leave it on until it's actually done. Splash pad or, some type of water feature. I mean, again, it would still be good somewhere in town. Whether it's realistic, unless it got built like in town center or somewhere, like meaning by the developer, like in the town square. I don't really know if it's going to happen, but.
So quick clarification on that, just because it's come up internally, is, the technology to add things to existing pools has become just a lot more accessible. Things like having small attachment slides or small climbing walls. And I know that I've had my staff show some interest in exploring those. Is that something that falls under this category, or do we add another level of specificity and say new or off-site?
Personally, I think you would be talking about new or off-site from
Okay.
one of the pools. This would be a separate aquatics feature that, rather than just an add-on
Okay.
to an existing pool.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that sounds like the thing down on the Pearl Street Mall.
Exactly.
That is
And
completely- yeah.
Louisville has one within their community park. There's all kinds of private mall
Oh,
developments
that's
that
right, they
have
do.
them. If you.
The Orchards has one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I think this is a prime amenity for the developer to add to downtown Superior.
Yeah, and I think
And
we
not,
have it on
and
there.
not as part of a park, like as part of the town square.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're typically seeing these more often, is within like malls. You're not seeing, I mean, you do see them in parks, but you see them a lot in malls.
In cement.
Well, I mean, it's not a dumb idea. It attracts like people to hang out at your mall.
Exactly.
And, if they hang out at your mall long enough, they're going to get hungry, or they're going to want to go and shop or whatever, so. Basketball hoops, I mean, we've now added another basketball court in town at Wildflower. That doesn't necessarily omit the need for these, but it does reduce, I would guess, probably the importance of this, but that's what will happen when we rank it.
right.
Community Ridge Bike Park enhancements,
Coyote Ridge?
yeah, or
Community Ridge?
Coyote Ridge
Right.
Bike Park enhancements. So we talked about adding like mountain bike features,
Unless we
like
had
trussels and like different jumps and
And,
stuff.
and for the folks who weren't there for this particular
Mhm.
one, when we did the outreach, we got a big cry from the community that a lot of folks who came at least, didn't want to see any enhancements, right?
Because we
Coyote Ridge.
largely got the dog off-leash crowd.
I'm not gonna argue, I'm
Yeah.
just saying that believe me,
It was biased.
believe me, you guys probably know my opinion about that, but to be fair, the folks that did come out here said they didn't want to see any changes
Right.
to that areas,
Yeah.
to be fair.
That's right. And then the flip side of that is Coyote Ridge was built as a mountain bike trail.
Right.
Not a pedestrian, not a dog walking trail, not a running trail, as a mountain biking trail. And so this idea really came from, well, to try to return it to that. But then out of that meeting came what Corbett's saying, is that the people in attendance at the meeting largely said, no, just leave it the way it is.
And it became, and in all fairness on both sides, it became excuse my French, a bitch fest on off-leash dogs versus actual Coyote Ridge. So,
Right.
But
And
the message that came out was,
off-leash,
we don't
yeah,
want anybody to
off-leash
change,
dog
but it's cute. So take that for what it's worth.
enforcement.
I'm not trying to sway anybody, I'm just trying to present the facts.
Yeah, no, it became really an enforcement issue of the off-leash
Right.
Or the on-leash
So it may not have been,
requirement.
it may not have been representative, but that's the message that came
Yeah.
out.
But should it be on here? That would be the question.
Right, I just wanted to help present some of the
No,
background
no, I
that
agree.
they don't have.
Well, I think it's still an amenity opportunity that the town has control over.
I think it is. You have it on there, you just rank it to where you think it
The
is. based
same
on-
with, if you jump 2 down to number 15, you have off-leash dog open space hiking area.
Yeah.
That basically came from the discussion that
meeting.
Corbett is referring to.
Same meeting.
Of, convert Coyote Ridge into like the equivalent of Davidson Mesa, which, if those who pay attention, got closed to dogs, and then
Well,
there
Because
was a
of the
whole
fecal matter.
uproar
Well-
over it, and now they're saying they will not keep it permanently closed as an off-leash area, but they need to change their policy. They need to better manage it.
How many pounds did they remove?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hundreds of pounds.
But yeah, it
Well,
was a
yeah.
problem. So 13 and 15 basically, at least as far as potential location, overlap.
Right. I will argue also that the difference between Coyote Ridge and Davidson Mesa is Coyote Ridge sits in between 2 sets of houses,
Mhm.
where Davidson Mesa is literally open space that there's nothing on the other side.
Well,
just
and it's
But it's not.
fenced,
But it's
right?
and it's fenced. But it's not an open space that traveled because it's in between 2 communities.
Right.
Different. It's a little different.
Right. So then sandwiched in between batting cages at Community Park, that really came from a request of that one team, and then it stayed in there anyway. And
Staff reaches out every year.
so I guess the question here is this fall under the Bell Flatirons BVSD type item where it would only happen if a team partnered with the town, or would it potentially happen just the town on its own?
Is there any batting cages over here?
Batting? No,
Where?
there's golf.
At a
simulator.
sports stable?
Yeah.
Yeah, the entire the mezzanine on the second level is 12 of them.
Oh, there is?
So does this satisfy that?
I think the initial request that came from Monarch Little League was to have,
They wanted it right next to.
yeah,
It's like
so
a
when you're warming up.
Warm-up space. It's
Oh,
really what
okay.
And we talked to their board. We were willing to pitch in on it. I mean, I would say that the style of amenity that they were looking for was, it's the draped over nets. So it's
Okay.
fairly specific to enhancing the fields that are down there for gameplay. I don't know that you'd get a ton of use of just going in there. You might get somebody that would just go in there and hit around.
But that's the thing. Would it be open if I just wanted to go down and hit, or would there be some type of liability thing where it's like, no, only the team
Most of them are open.
can do it?
Yeah.
So
Now, if the teams had them booked or reserved, you would have.
Yeah, I think if we keep this on there, we might want to clarify it a little bit more, because to me, a batting cage is, I go put a quarter in and a bunch of
Yeah.
balls is pitched at me
That sounds horrible.
versus if somebody else has to be there with me to throw something for me to hit. That's
Yep.
a total different scenario.
well,
not like
right.
ducks.
And so if I wanted to go down, there wouldn't be like a pitching machine.
That would
That
be
would belong
expensive.
to a team or whatever.
Right. So to me, that's not a batting cage, it's a batting area. I don't know.
Batting-
We
yeah, like-
We need to clarify that because,
Batting nets, or I don't know, like
It's basically a warm-up cage.
right,
Because it can be for hitting or for pitching, it doesn't have to be.
yeah, batting practice area at Community Park, something like that instead of batting cages.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say Community Park. Name the fields. Batting,
Between Stewart and Scanlon?
yeah,
Yeah.
batting practice area at
'Cause
Stewart
if it's not there, there's no
Fields.
point in putting it anywhere else.
So off leash, we talked about that. Community garden, we've talked about that for years. It's
it's
still.
funny because whenever I did that batting cage on the house for the last couple of years that's been on there, I really thought of batting cages. And I
Yeah.
ranked it that way, so.
Yeah.
It would be really nice to put, it could make some money.
But they're
There's
ugly.
also-
You could make-
You have to build and have some upkeep.
You could also make some money by charging a quarter for the tennis courts. That's good.
indoor performance space, I wonder if this is really still a standalone item or if it just falls under number 1, which is I mean, it's off the screen right now, but the rec center, like, community space.
Yeah, I think it falls under number 1.
I do too.
And so, back to the question we had earlier about teams, where we said teen outdoor space. Did we assume outdoor, or was the requirement for performance space or performance outdoor space?
There's a second one on there.
There's an outdoor amphitheater, which is a more specific
Okay.
amenity.
Just currently in park number 1 design.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because I guess because if I'm reading this and I'm thinking they're just looking for performance space, and because of the weather, maybe we say indoor versus outdoor.
Outdoor pool, I would still leave that at this point.
Absolutely.
It's not
Oh, yeah.
saying specific to town center, it's just an outdoor pool. Until the aquatics question gets answered, I think indoor and outdoor pool are both valid amenities
Okay.
on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Outdoor amphitheater, like we said, that's included in Park 1. It's an outdoor performance space. We've talked about this potential for years. Agility course for dogs at dog park.
Where did they get added? The agility course, was that one of those things that was maybe somebody brought up a long time ago and said, we could use this, and because it's never happened, is it OBE, overcome by events, or is it?
No, I added,
No, somebody
I added
got the
it like
request.
2 years
Well,
ago.
they used to, then I don't know if they still do, but they do bring it down to the dog park
Yeah.
at Autry in the circle area.
Like a portable
Outside
one,
of
yeah.
Who brings it down?
Donnell, we used to have a contract with a gal named Donnell Slater who lives in the community, and she would do
I
dog
remember
agility
that.
classes. And then we, for a number of years, would get the requests to just put in the permanent agility features, the
I saw
teeter-totter,
I
the
saw
A-frame.
something about this a couple years ago at like community dog parks, and I added it to the list. And it just happens that it wasn't an original idea.
Yeah.
It's
And
been
then,
around. It's just not permanent.
The youth advisory kids last year, they did a project where when we replace our fire hydrants around town, the kids actually paint them up and put them down there, and I think it was just kind of an extension of that, trying to make it look a little more, or operate a little more, active down there.
I wonder if the Autry Park interpretive signage really belongs on this list, because at this point, Autry Park isn't really the only place that has the potential for interpretive signage. I mean, there's no longer a sign up on Coyote Ridge. There's other parks in town that don't have any type of signage, which could, if it were part of a larger
What do we exactly
initiative.
mean by interpretive sign? Because
know
I
what's
could
to
go
interpret
many
over
different ways with that, right? And I know it's been in there and I never asked.
Just, Autry Park is named after a historic family, and I think
okay.
the idea was to have, some town history. Am I right on
Okay.
that?
Well, we've got the Autry Park family sign down there. If I remember, so going back to when the districts kind of had control, there are various points throughout town where things are, water features are explained, or the terrain was explained, or certain areas in town was explained. There's some that are along the Rock Creek Trail.
Is that an amenity or is that a historical committee?
Exactly. I'm almost wondering if this is really belongs not only as amenity, but
Yeah.
even with PROSTAC rather than with like historical.
Yeah, because
commission.
Larry Dorsey and myself are the ones that do the signs now.
Yeah.
And they typically are the ones who, if it's historical, they normally request it. Yeah. This has just been on here, I think, for a while.
I would vote to remove it.
And then
Can we, along with what we did with the team, can we reach out to the historical committee and say,
It's not just
we would like for you guys to maybe champion this, or at least take this on as one of your considerations as opposed to an amenity? Instead of just dropping it, maybe hand off the
Yeah.
ball.
Because their sign list right now that they'd like to tackle will be the cemetery, will be the next one, and then if we do something with the original Hake Homestead over here in
Right.
original town.
I do wonder if it is in a bigger project that's not just historical. So it would potentially include PROSTAC if it was dealing with items, you know, like geography and stuff like that. But
Coyotes, I know we've talked about that as a group. Do you do like a
Right.
coyote
So-
yeah,
education
wildlife,
signage?
all that,
To me-
like educational signage, I guess would be the more general.
Well, exactly what you're saying, Peter. To me, a single sign itself is not an amenity. It's if we have a trail or something that folks do, they go from sign to sign to sign, and they're doing something, and it's a bigger, large part of a bigger picture thing. That's the amenity. You can go out and you can follow this small trail and learn about things, but going and seeing one sign on a trail in itself, to me, is not the amenity.
Right. So are you suggesting we just replace it with a more general
Either-
educational signage throughout?
Either that or hand
Town's
it off
park
to-
slash trail
if it-
system?
Or if it truly is just a one-off sign, hand it off to another group, but, right. If we want to make it part of a larger project, to say, let's do I don't know, how do you say it? A
Educational.
tour, a tour,
Mhm.
a education of
Wayfinding.
whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Well, right, I mean, there is the wayfinding project that, I
Mhm.
don't know where that stands at this point.
If we really want to get inventive, you could give somebody, a map and a trail and say, go find these points,
Mhm.
right? And then they go find these points, and then you don't tell them the points, and they go to, that to me is amenity. I got a map that says you can
Right.
go do this activity or go do this thing, and there's these things for you to learn or you to go visit, and you have to find the trail, and you walk to it, and you're looking on the map and say, oh, I have to follow this and do this.
Yeah.
I got this, I'm here, and this is what I learned. That,
Did-
to me, is the amenity versus
Sure.
just the sign.
So essentially, the like the passport program that we do, but with
A permanent type thing.
an educational component
Right.
to it. Mhm.
That would be the amenity.
Right.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I thought the Orchard Park thing was just to get the sign up so it wouldn't be called the dog park. That was the original.
Well, no, there is
There's
an
a sign
Autry
The
Park.
Autry signs. Oh, I mean, we
Yeah.
put the Autry sign in immediately. So
Sure.
let's see here.
Jim Payne, Rock Creek resident, Superior resident. Just, I back up to Community Park. Community Park has a number of interpretive signs. And interpretive signs, as Patrick will tell you, is Parks and Rec speak for all the signs that you have in places like Community Park. So I look right out along the Rock Creek Trail there. And a lot of people stop and read those signs. You just see it all the time. You think that, okay, they've been there forever. You think most people would have been through and read them by now, but there are always people out there stopping and reading them, and they do. There's some grass areas. There are all kinds of different natural areas throughout Community Park, and I oversaw the Archery Park process. That was the thought there. They're the same thing in Archery Park. There's the creek. There's all that they did when they restored the creek. You're going to have the same thing in the Cold Creek corridor. So interpretive signs is an important Parks and Rec responsibility, and I would be I'd caution you against giving that up.
So can I ask you a question?
We'd work with Historical Society if it was an historical sign.
So I guess to me, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but to me, the difference between an amenity and a sign that somebody else put there is amenity, somebody goes and does that thing for the purpose of that. So how do they know those signs are out there? Do they go and walk the trail because they want to go read the signs and they know the signs are there and they go do that for the purpose? Or is it because they're already on the trails, they happen to see the signs that they stop and read? And maybe we're just splitting hairs on the definition, but to me, if you have a sign that's there that somebody put there that somebody's already on the trail and using that amenity, the trail there is the amenity, and they're getting the benefit of reading the sign versus hey, I want to go do this thing, and because there's these signs and I can learn a lot, that's the difference of amenity
Again,
and a happenstance.
Amenities, Parks and Rec speak to, and it all ties together.
I know.
I'm just saying that, and I see your point, and there's some ideally, if you'd want it at the level where the signs themselves
Cause people
are
to-
attractive. I wouldn't disagree with that, but they're still very, very important. They're very popular. People appreciate them. They could include. I hear all the time people saying, "Why can't we put mile markers and things?" I mean, there are lots of things that come under the rubric of, the term of interpretive signage, and again, it's Parks and Rec speak, but I wouldn't give it up to any other committee. I'd make sure it's part of your core responsibility.
And I'm not actually suggesting we remove the item. I'm saying the specific reference to Autry Park. I think we should replace it with a more general, educational signage throughout the parks and trail system, like a larger. And that, in my mind, would be more of an amenity.
Right,
Because,
exactly.
like you said, you could tie it to like the passport program or the wayfinding signage program, something where you could actually kind of have a course, like you could actually have like people walking a route that has multiple interpretive signs.
And I don't even disagree. In fact, I love the idea of, I've done this in other areas, is where you put mile markers so people who are walking it actually have an idea of how much they're getting. But it's the difference between the way it's worded and what you said was, if I put a single post in there that said that's mile 1 and nothing else, right? Or if I put a bigger plan together and I say, if you walk around and hold this, you see mile marker 1, mile marker 2, mile marker 3, mile marker 4, and you can actually go for the purpose and you can figure out and say, I want to walk 3 miles or I want to walk 4 miles. And you see these mile markers to help you. It's a bigger plan versus just putting a single stake that says, yep, that's it. You hit a point. To me, that's the difference, I guess.
Yeah. So we'll figure out a way to reword it, but we'll change the focus. It's still interpretive science, but we'll
And I have
change
to
it.
apologize to everybody tonight. I've been very argumentative all day with everybody. I've been in meetings all day doing this type of stuff at work all day long, so it's just carrying on.
You need to go back to old Chicago, give you a drink.
Yeah.
I'm a little more amenable with that, right?
Guy starts to build spaceships, and all of a sudden he's like,
Starts to.
So the outdoor skating rink, this has really been on here forever. It's basically since the inline rink was removed from where the community park basketball court now is on Indiana. And I gotta be perfectly honest, aside from the fact that I think this is just a realistic item, especially if we're talking about ice. That's the thing, it's not really defined as ice or inline, but I've honestly, in all the years that this has been on here, I've never had a single resident say to me, why don't we have a skating rink in town? So I don't know that
Here's
there's
the funny thing
a
about that.
desire for it.
I'm right there with you. Here's the funny thing on this one. Whenever I've read this, I've always read ice because in my mind, that skating rink and skateboard park coincide because you can do kind of both at the same thing, whatever, right? So the only thing that distinguishes this one is ice. And so if it really doesn't mean ice, then I agree with you. I don't understand.
And honestly, I don't think it matters at this point if we're talking about ice or inline. I just don't think that there's ever been a real community desire for this. I think it's just an item that's stayed on here for years.
Well, if we were talking inline, I think a skate park itself. I've seen folks with inline skates at the Louisville Skate Park. So
Well, no, that's
so
true.
it's doubled up.
The use of inline skates, roller skates for that matter, traditional roller skates at skate parks has definitely grown more in popularity, along with things like scooters and stuff. So I know people who like roller skate at skateboard parks.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think we really need it anymore. I think it can come on.
I'm good.
I agree.
So we've taken some stuff off, we've redefined the interpretive signage. Is there anything we want to add that anyone can think of?
And just so you guys kind of remember the process, I'll red line here a little bit and make sure that we get it back out. We update this kind of more narrative piece that goes with it that tries to explain it, and then you guys also will have some time to review it. So I know that.
And by the same token, though, if somehow we have an epiphany after you guys send it out, we could always send that out to the committee members to say, oh, I know we didn't get it on the list tonight, but I had this epiphany and I would like to add this to the list, and I'm going to put it on my list if you guys want to consider it.
Yeah, so and then
the only problem with that, because that's happened in the past, is some people may have already voted their list, and then someone adds an item, and then you only get like 5 out of 9 that vote for it, and so it ends up low on the list because not everyone voted for it.
That's fine, at least, but then maybe next year it goes in the list.
Right. What I was trying. It stays on the list for next year.
My point is, just because if you don't think of it tonight, doesn't mean it's not.
Right.
Yeah, no.
But I would say if you don't think of it tonight, try to think of it in the next, say, 2 weeks,
Right.
because I'll probably send this out in like a week and a half, 2 weeks, so that everyone has up to 2 weeks to fill it out.
And
So, try to, if it's on your mind when you leave the meeting, try to think of it sooner than later, so we can add to the list. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, just one suggestion, maybe you've done this, but I think it's important to have a definite process. Doesn't have to be big, complicated, defined process, but make sure that you're actually researching what are the emerging trends. I mean, it was only a few years ago. I mean, I never heard of pickleball. I think I heard about it from Sandy Hammerly back, in when I was on PROSTAC. And these things take so long to emerge, get through the process. It took how many years to get the bike park built and all that sort of thing. So you want to know what's coming and be ahead of the curve.
And I will say, I try to keep my eyes open to stuff, and there are specific things that could be added to this list, I guess, that I've seen or thought about, but whether or not, the only problem with some trends is they truly are trends. I mean, like these Ninja Warrior courses have become really popular, but I kind of wonder, like, if you build one, what's it really going to look like in 5 years?
There was an article
is it really going to be used, or is it going to hold up to the weather, that type of thing?
And plus, if you get one person who, say pickleball, says, I want this on there, and they say it for a couple times, it gets on the list, but then it starts maybe getting moved down, and eventually it gets to the bottom of the list, and like, how did that even get on there? Oh yeah, one guy 10 years ago said they wanted this, and it got on the list, and I haven't heard anything since, so.
I mean, I've thought of other things, like we've even talked about some of them. A treehouse was one, and I meant like a literal treehouse, and then like through the whole process it came out like, oh, you can't do it for one reason or the other. Here we can do this fake little tree with a fake little tree house in it. It's like nothing like the idea I had. The embankment slide was one that got specifically talked about for Pirate Park, but that was just an idea that came from just like looking at other parks. There's some cool things like, does anyone know, like there's like a climbing wall, like this big outdoor kind of thing. There's one, what is it, like in the Dumbo area, like under the Brooklyn Bridge? And it's like this huge, just like park with all these like outdoor climbing wall features. And it's like a public park. It's not like like a paid thing. It's like, could you do something like that? Have more than just like a little kid like we've done in some of the parks? Like, could you have something much bigger? But again, how much of these are actual trends where they're going to fade over time versus like amenities we want?
Well, they're all trends. I mean, there was just a big article in the Wall Street Journal about how machine-based aerobics and are beginning to die and they're being replaced by kickboxing and this sort of thing. So these things have life cycles.
Yeah.
And you know, it's you can get ideas to be ahead of the curve.
Well, ideally, you know, it's like a house, right? When you model a house, you don't want to remodel a house to make it look like 2000 or 2010. You want to remodel a house that makes it lasts the test of time. And that's what we look for, at least me, I look for amenities, is I don't want something that screams 1980, 1990, 2000. I want something that, you know, a swing set lasts the test of time, right? A skate park lasts that. So that's the thing you have to consider. And by the way, so I don't see it on here, but do we want to add the embankment slide to the list of amenities?
I thought we took that off for a reason.
Oh, you guys already took that off?
It's a rattlesnake issue.
Rattlesnake.
Oh,
We
yeah.
remember we need, yeah.
Forgot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Funny guy.
Well, I'm from Texas. We don't care about rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
They're scary.
They greet you at your doorstep every night.
All right, so yeah, if anyone can think of items to add, Corey's saying he's watching the live feed now, so Corey, if you have any items to add, I don't know what you mean by research emerging trends, but, yeah, if anyone wants to do that, research emerging trends in the next couple of days or something, and wants to add stuff, just email it to the group.
Yeah.
Well, the one item that we have talked about quite a few times, even tried to get one bill, was the shade structures. And I don't know if we want to, this is the place
Right.
for it or not, if we want to add it to this.
Again,
The other thing,
yeah.
two things kind of going hand in hand too. The shade structure combination with and I don't know if you've probably seen this over at Traillands. All of their light fixtures are solar powered,
Mhm.
and they all have charging
Yeah. Yep.
boxes on them. And again, not necessarily under our, I don't know if it falls under park and rec, but it does, because it's lights. So the
Yeah.
Well,
lights-
but that's
Oh,
one of
yeah.
the things is I wonder, like, stuff like that you're talking about, like park improvements. And I
Right,
wonder
yeah,
if
yeah.
that falls under amenities, specific amenities, or if it falls more under what we were trying to do with the park improvement.
Yeah.
The, you know, the $35,000 a year, which has now been taken away, but never really got us anything to begin with. But to do things just to improve existing parks.
Correct, right.
Not specific amenities, but, improvements.
I think I could almost categorize that as amenity, because amenity to me is something that would draw somebody to a park. So if you had a teen that, you know, hey, I can go and hang out with my friends and I can charge my phone at the same time, or whatever it is, that would draw me to that area. So to me, that.
Now, in
that
fairness,
definition-
these light posts are around 2 fields.
I understand, but I'm
No,
saying.
but I'm just saying, that's where I came up with the idea. I saw it, I said, this is something
Something
that we
that-
at least need to talk about. Is this something that,
It's-
especially with parks 1 and 2 going on over here, if they're gonna put lights, which they better be putting some kind of security lights, if nothing. I'm not talking about the lighting the fields. I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah, there's
security-
lights in there.
Security lamps. And again, it's a.
Well, no, they
I don't know
are
if that's
talking
a-
about field lighting at this point. That's what's in.
They're talking about, I mean, we've
plan,
got, that
right?
thing's lit up.
Yeah.
So different than Wildflower.
But, no, I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying, Ron. And so if there is a way that we can think of that as a larger amenity, sure, I would say,
Yeah. The charging station, they have benches as well that have like a, picture what we've done at the tennis court with like the little shade structure, but it's solar, and then you kind of like plug your phone in right there.
but,
So-
yeah, I just see this as kind of like a little bit of a gray area, like it's on the fence, because there's also, ADA accessibility
Mhm.
items. It's like, well, okay, some of that is definitely amenity, but some of it is just, park maintenance, park improvement, like kind of getting yourself up to code type stuff. And so it's, does it belong here? It doesn't, because yes, part of it could be like play equipment, specific features for, disabled, but others is just, the ramps into the play pits, the surfacing in the play pits, that
Mhm.
type of stuff. And does that really belong as an amenity? I don't, know.
Yeah, I don't know, just throwing it out there. Ideas I saw that I thought were cool and would definitely have some value, so.
Yeah. And
I don't know where they fit either. I'm just throwing it
well,
out there.
and I would say this stuff fits when we're talking about new parks, like parks 1 and 2 and 3
Mhm.
in town center. I mean, I know at this point, at least parks 1 and 2 are kind of baked, but I mean,
we've got lights with the. I actually think, Ron, we already have them spec'd
Yeah.
in parks 1 and 2.
but some
Well,
of
we
this.
don't have no wildflower.
The board, you got to remember, the board voted not to have any lights at Wildflower, and even further, they voted not to even let us stub up electrical in the park. So that
That's
was
kind of where I came up with it.
Yeah.
Seeing a trail was not seeing, don't have anything near
Yeah.
wildflower.
Yep.
There should be, but I think again, the board doesn't.
which anecdotally we've had more requests to add lights over there than we have almost anything. So there you go.
It's kind of like the toilet
Neither here nor
thing,
there.
the restroom. It's like it's like a no-brainer. You know, people are going to ask for it if you don't include it. Why they
Yeah.
wouldn't have just included
Yeah.
it seems silly.
We tried.
But
No,
Okay.
those are the solar charging stations. I think are something that's going to stick around for a while.
you still have to have your own cord to plug in, right? Who
You
walks
do.
around with a cord?
You know, you'd be surprised.
Absolutely.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I know that they're already talking about that at the sports stable. Just a lot, like just having big ports like you have at the airport.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like the airport ones, like they do have like the cords on a, like on the string or whatever. Like you can't steal the cord type thing. But that's because it's inside,
Right.
too. So that's you can't really have those outside.
I mean,
exposed to
Well,
weather.
the only thing I would hesitate about putting cords on it because it's electrical, and if that cord was damaged and somebody plugged
Right.
it in and damaged their phone, would they try to go after
Mhm.
the city? That's a different issue than
Yeah,
plugging
you have to
into
put
a-
it
See,
use at
another-
your own risk.
No,
another
you know what I
huge-
mean, right?
Another
Another
huge trend
thing-
that's going on right now is you're getting people that are pushing hard for public Wi-Fi as actually like a
Well, I said that.
Mhm.
Well, I joked about that for the teen amenity.
an advertisable amenity.
Wi-Fi hotspots, yeah.
Yeah, and making sure that all the, so it's that whole thing is just, I don't see it going. It's not going to go backwards. So
Yeah.
The city of Boulder's doing a
With Mario's
study, or the Boulder County's doing a study, so let's wait and see what they
Yeah.
say first.
Yeah.
piggyback.
All right,
What
so
you do is you have a little thing where you have to have multiple people stand in multiple things, and once they stand in it, then you get the free Wi-Fi. So
Yeah.
it encourages them to do together and do things as a group in order for it to actually work.
has to have
That's our
like X number of
amenity.
devices within range to
Yeah,
activate
but
or
you have to
something.
have, they're so far apart that you can't have one person step in multiple.
Yeah, all right. All right, so let's move on to indoor space. So I guess I'll let
Sure.
Patrick give us the update from last Monday.
Let's kind of open it up here. Give me a second.
I mean, was anyone there or
I was
watching?
there.
Susan was there.
I was
Okay.
there.
I watch a little bit.
I got off work at 10 p.m. that night. And 10.
I watched it from a hotel in Virginia, and
Corey, Corey was there for.
Yeah, that's right. He was
I
there.
had all intention of going, and then I got called into a meeting that lasted forever.
Sorry about that. We're renaming. We're instituting like a naming and file organization process.
So it'd be simpler.
Yep.
And then all your links
We've
were-
got stuff everywhere. It is crazy. So, and I'll probably even invite Sandy to kind of chime in. So if you guys remember, we presented on the 27th, right around Thanksgiving. The original task was to start to, so PROSTAC had on the work plan for this year to get to a thumbs up or a thumbs down on going to a vote on the Town 15 parcel, right? And we went through the process in March to relook at all the work, the BRS studies, the survey information, all the previous discussions to come up with a list of amenities. We did that. And then somewhere in the mix of this indoor space opportunity came up. If you guys remember, it ended up in the Daily Camera, kind of caught everybody off guard. That was very quickly followed up by the board giving you guys direction to determine whether or not the sports stable, existing amenities with some type of combination of us building some amenities or working with the sports stable to add amenities would fulfill the needs list from the survey. You guys went through that process. We did the tour. We generally said, yeah, if you were to build something in this open area, X, Y, and Z, swimming pool, locker rooms, some other rooms, plus what they have, it does meet what that list would be. We then had some board members who said, well, wait a second, we're not done with the Town 15 process, so let's start working on the two processes at the same time. We presented that generally on the 27th. At that time, they said, you're not anywhere. We need more info specific to the financials. We had some trustees who very specifically said, who pays and how much. Until we get that, we're not going past go. So this was our attempt to determine who pays, and they wanted it for both options, and for what. So we presented, based off of, I've been continuing to do work with the guys from BRS as well as Adolphus Peterson on some site construction costs, which is this Town 15 full community rec center. And then obviously we had a whole different firm that I was working with to come up with some stuff here. So what we presented was, this is nothing new for you guys, 60,000 square feet. We were looking at a one-time capital cost of 30. This was probably a little bit on the lower end. Here was our debt service. But the long and the short of it is, as you guys know and as we've discussed now for a while, if we were to do something on the Town 15, it would increase, or we would need to go to the voters for a property tax increase. And probably a combination of not only property tax, but some sales tax. You could weight these however you would want. You could lump it all into property tax. You could lump it all into sales tax. The board at that meeting on the 27th said, well, if there are some opportunities to do this partnership, and there was a shortfall of around $500,000, we still think we might like that idea, so flesh that idea out. That's what we presented. And I think we got some further direction to say, okay, and I flat out asked the board after the conversation of saying, are we at this point continuing to work on this Town 15? Is there any appetite for this proposed tax increase? And as we've heard kind of consistently from at least 4 of the board members is, no, we want to focus on sports stable. So the direction that we were given after that meeting was to come back with maybe a different financial scenario than we've presented here, to potentially get what this operating shortfall would be to go away. And the board had some thoughts of, does the town front some more money up front? I believe Trustee Hansen threw out, could you take money from an interfund loan from the water fund and contribute $3 million up front to the construction? Trustee Dozal recommended that we show a fee schedule that would cover 100% of the costs. So that's what we're kind of currently working on now. But we did ask the board, myself and Manager Magley, is there a continued interest to work on the Town 15? And they said no. So we haven't been given a date of when we were doing any type of follow-up, but that was the big takeaway. So if you guys remember, we were, even to get to this this kind of $500,000 subsidy here, we had been given direction from the board during a previous meeting to not veer too far away from any type of municipal monthly fee. Now, they did change their minds at the last meeting and said, well, wait a sec, we want to see what it would take to cover 100% of the costs. There was also some discussion of, well, could we look at this partnership differently as if you had 3 businesses going into a business together? So we're going to have those conversations. But for those of you who didn't see it, to kind of keep it in a range that we thought that the board was interested in, you were looking at a entry-level monthly rate for the pool and just some extended gymnasium at $59, all the way up to $139 a month for just full use of the facility. And you can kind of see how that stair steps its way up. As we've said to the board all along, we are making some assumptions about the type of membership or the amounts of members that we think would sign up. And we've always kind of stayed between that 2,000 and at the high side, 3,000 members. And you can kind of see those numbers here. And maybe you assume you've got 1,100 individuals, maybe 270 individual non-resident, some family rates, some non-resident family rates. We were ultimately looking at about $200,000 of income off of memberships per month. We got those numbers for those of you who remember the Lakeshore study. Lakeshore gave us a number, said that about 2,000 of their members were from Superior. We know from our own pool statistics that there's about 2,000 people that have active ID cards that consistently use the pool, so that's how we were coming up with that number. So we're going to take another crack at it. It'll probably look a little bit different, but just so we're all on the same page, is that there's not a lot of interest on the board, the existing board, to continue to go after the Town 15.
So just a comment on this real quick. The numbers you're showing are, I'm a member of Lakeshore, so the numbers you're showing are very similar to Lakeshore. And Lakeshore is 2 blocks away from my house.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So I would think that if the numbers are the same, based on geographical location, you're going to get, people are going to be aligned to whichever's closer to them if the numbers are the same, because it's the same amenity.
It's a full athletic.
And we presented that information in the
full
cover
athletic
memo
club
for the
where
presentation.
It's much more limited scale.
Right. I mean, yeah. So the silver.
They never gave
the silver aligns with what you get of everything for Lakeshore. The silver here.
They've
Maybe a few
revised
things,
that
but
number
it's
so many
gonna be
times,
geographically
Jim,
based.
that it's fairly
Well,
inconsistent.
so at this point, PROSTAC hasn't been asked to comment or engage in any further public process. It seems like the board is just running with it on their own. So I think mostly we just needed to get an update. I don't really know that we need to discuss this much. I mean, yeah, of course I have my personal opinions on it, but I just don't know that we have a need to discuss it at this point until we have guidance from the board. I mean, unless anyone feels differently that you think it's worthwhile for us to discuss. So, but I mean, I will allow public comment on this item since Jim's here, if you wish to. But yeah, I don't think this is really a discussion item until we get further direction from the board. I mean, did anyone read the camera article or see the Channel 2 news story that basically says this sports stable partnership is moving forward? No? Well, they both exist last week if you want to try to look for them. Jim?
Okay. So again, I'm Jim Payne. I'm a Superior resident. I chaired PROSTAC for almost 7 years, doing the time and most of the process and outreach and qualitative study, and a major quantitative statistical study were performed to get at the need for indoor space. And I have a number of concerns, and I understand that the direction is not clear. I don't, Patrick, you said there's no interest. There's no question a majority of the board was giving head nods towards the sports stable approach and dismissed the Town 15 approach. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I just want to get out on the table a couple of thoughts on this that may become pertinent to you later. First of all, the process after all the years, 6 figures in surveys and outreach and unbelievable number of outreach events, quantitative statistical surveys and all that sort of thing for 6 or 7 years. Essentially, this was decided in a 2-hour work session with no public comment, with the major participants, against whom I have nothing, and I really didn't have any problem with them being there, but you had Sports Stable and Impact Sports at the table, sitting with the board, and no public comment at all. So that disturbed me from a process point of view. It is disturbing that PROSTAC would not even be, that the board wouldn't be insisting that PROSTAC give their viewpoint into that process and be sitting at the table. So that's number one. And number two is they've really gone upside down on the priorities. I heard it said more than one time during that meeting that this is what everybody wants, and now we have a great opportunity to do it. But there's never been evidence that this is what everybody wants. The evidence has been, if anything, to the contrary. If you look at it sort of as a pyramid, you know, what at the base of the pyramid is the widest level of support that will have the probably, in my mind, almost certainly a majority of the support, maybe a very high percentage of support of the voters and the residents of Superior. That's what you want to focus on. The pool and the rec activity, the more serious sports and rec amenities that they're talking about adding to the sports stable, which is a private entity, and we're going to go in and spend $10 million or $11 million, and I'm guarantee it's going to be more than that, is to add amenities to the sports stable, which is a private enterprise, which didn't see the value in doing it on their own. And we're going to go in and do this as a town into a facility that we don't even ultimately own and control. There's never been the evidence that this is the widespread support. There's no question that there are sizable constituencies and advocates for the sports amenities that they're talking about adding to the sports stable, but that has never been shown to be where there's the broad level of support throughout the town. So what has been the evidence of the broad support? This town of 13,000 going on 15 to 16,000 has no community amenities at all indoors. We've got fantastic outdoor stuff, but there's no place to meet. There's no place for scouts to meet. There's no place for other organizations, and you can't just look at the existing organizations. There are other kinds of community activities that never happen because there's no place to do them. And there has always been evidence that there is broad support for a community center, which addresses multi-purpose rooms, generational facilities for teens and seniors, digital library, all those things that go into that kind of a community center, has shown wide support in all of the studies and everything we've done for 6 or 7 years, going back to 2007, actually, which was actually an earlier statistical study. So what's happening is all of a sudden we're going right past that and putting it aside, and there wasn't even a discussion in that work session that said, okay, let's look at Plan B. Let's look at the Town 15. And in fact, I contend that this was really a false choice, because they said, do we do this fantastic deal in downtown with Sports Stable, or spend $35 million in Richmond, well, in Town 15? But it doesn't have to be $35 million. There are a lot of other options. In the studies and working with BRS at the time and Greenplay, it's not, doesn't have to be $30 to $40 million. It can be a much smaller scale community center that would be scalable, so that in future years we could go back and add tracks and indoor tracks and pools and multi-purpose gyms and specialized gyms and things like that. So I don't know where all of a sudden it just became, we do this deal with Sports Stable, or we have to sink $35 million into the Town 15. That's really a false choice. There were other valuable options that were never looked at. So, and then the other part is that when the community center aspect is brought up, there's this tendency for the proponents of this plan to say, oh, we can put community rooms in this facility, and we have some space downtown, of course, which we have to develop, but that's not the way you build a community center. That's not the way you address the needs of the community. So I'm a major user of the fire station, which is the only real community space we have. Through the HOA, we have a lot of meetings and events in those facilities. And I know other people that use the fire station and would need community space. And, generally that requires, we have things that we have to bring in. We have the scout groups, there's other groups that use those facilities. They have events, they have activities, they have to bring things in. It's not something where you can always just go and park in a garage and walk and go into a building and upstairs and down halls and, to this community room in the middle of a sports center. I mean, there's some use for that, but it really isn't the way to design a really useful, welcoming community space for Superior. So I'm afraid that these things that really came through a many year, six-figure process of a lot of input and a lot of work are just all of a sudden being dismissed, and I'm afraid we're going in the wrong direction. So I just want to leave you that. And one final point is that I have always been a proponent that something is needed in Rock Creek. So we went down the road at developing town center, which I'm downtown area, which is important, vital to, always been part of the plan, and I'm fully supportive of it. And there needs to be community facilities in downtown. But Rock Creek, which is 12,000 people, has a very large, youth population, even larger than most of the towns surrounding us, has nothing indoors. There are no facilities at all. We're asking people to get in cars and drive down to downtown and park, which is inevitably what's going to happen in many instances. Younger kids, it's going to be more difficult for them to get down there. We need facilities in downtown, but Rock Creek really needs to have something. And going back in the history when the metro districts and all of this was broken up and we evolved into the system we have today, it was done without any consideration and any basis for having those kinds of facilities in the community of Rock Creek. And I think that's something that's sorely missing, and there needs to be something within Rock Creek, whatever is decided to be done in downtown. So I invite you to go through some of the history and all those surveys, and a lot of the results of the outreach is available. It's all on the website in different places, and I think you'll see that more thought should be given to these next steps. And I just urge you not to let us not to let the board completely throw out anything in Town 15. I think that would be a big mistake. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Just to add to Jim's comment, so we had at first. This is that slide that I've gone over with PROSTAC, I think fairly early in the process. But if we need to do kind of a refresher on the history of it, Peter, I actually think this was a request of yours, maybe even last year, that we start to put together like an ongoing timeline of the indoor space. Yeah, as you can see, I mean, this goes all the way back. There's the 2007 site study identifying, there's this information in here.
Yeah, but definitely starting 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, the indoor survey stuff, we had the survey working group. I think some people in this room even participated in the BRS process where we did the small, medium, and large options. So, yep, quite a bit of history, and we wanted to kind of keep that in the forefront and explaining that to the board. But a lot of good history behind it.
So does anyone else feel the need to discuss this further tonight, or at this point just wait and see if the board requests our participation going forward?
I would simply like to say that if you allow this to happen, it will happen. PROSTAC, I do not encourage PROSTAC to step back and just allow the board to do what they want to do. I was very frustrated at the meeting. There was actually a television release on Channel 2 before our meeting occurred that night, and there was an article in the Boulder Daily Camera on the day afterward that were, in my opinion, a leap of faith from what we had actually. I think I'm going to stop there, other than to say I think I spoke very strongly at the December meeting about the fact that I believed we were allowing this to become a recreation checklist, and asked that PROSTAC come out very strong in support of the community center concept, similar to what Jim mentioned. Peter did a great job of sending a very strong letter to the board. I want to say thank you, Peter, very much for doing that. And I will say that at this point in time, I do not believe I have any sort of a majority that I can convince to look at Town 15, and that if you guys want the community civic space to happen, I would not step back and let it happen. If you feel differently, otherwise the board's going to control this. And it may not be what you want.
Is this going to come in front of the board before the PROSTAC dinner?
The dinners haven't been scheduled and a date hasn't been set.
I thought we had a schedule.
The dates are changing based upon board's availability.
So it's not, what was it, February 5th before?
Yep.
That's no longer the case? All right.
So, help me remind me, based on the charter and authorization through the charter that the committee is allotted from the town board, what, other than saying we strenuously object or disagree, to quote a bad movie, what recourse do we have?
Well, I mean,
we could write a letter like you did, but
Sandy's comments at our last meeting were along the lines of, PROSTAC should do more of a job of presenting a vision for indoor space I don't want to say rec center because that's the problem, I think, is that people keep saying rec center and we're really not talking about rec center, we're talking about community center. That's really what my letter that I wrote to the board, because I couldn't be there last Monday, was about, was we need to stop looking at this as a pool and a fitness center. The town should not be in the business of competing with the neighboring rec centers. We need to have a community space. And yes, you're going to get some of those rec amenities potentially in a community space, but you're going to get so much more that's specific to this town. And so that's the decision I guess we have to come to, is even if we haven't been asked to participate anymore by this board, does PROSTAC, because it is on our work plan, we wouldn't be out of line in continuing the work on it. Do we want to see if there's a consensus among the committee members here along the lines of what the vision might be for such a facility? And do we work to develop that and present it to the board before it's too late?
Well, and I think there's one other option is, do we come together as a unified voice and say something to the effect that we would strongly recommend you hear an input from us that we're working, and that we will give this to you before you make a decision, right? To let them know that maybe something is coming, and don't make a quick decision. But the interesting thing to me is, and we've had these conversations among this committee, is do you take the path of least resistance, which is what it sounds like the board is doing. I could maybe make a partial solution and get away, boy, you're bothering me type thing go away, because I can make a partial solution and not have to worry about this anymore by teaming up with an easy thing. Or do I hold out for the harder, more encompassing vision that may not happen, right? And that's what, but we've had that conversations amongst ourselves, which way, and what vision are we trying to sell? I can get you an easy one that goes away, or I can hold out for something better.
Well, here's the first comment I'm going to make to you. Peter has come to the meetings and made comment. Jim Payne has come to the meeting. The board is hearing one voice. I really believe, if you guys believe strongly in something different, you need to get more people to talk about this. The second comment I would make is, just think about the fact that the front entrance to your recreation center will be the front entrance to the sports stable, because the pool's going to be on the bottom level, or they'll go in through Impact Sports, because we got a limited footprint there. So just think about what could be there. And if you want it to somehow be different, then as the board moves forward with trying to plan this, you need to have a strong voice in it. And that's all I can say. I'm fighting a losing battle right now. You have two trustees who still would like to see the Town 15 considered. There's five.
The only thing I worry about is if you're talking specifically about the sports stable location, if PROSTAC comes to some consensus that suggests, like, we're not opposed to the location, but we think the facility should be this instead. Well, it's a partnership. Is Impact Sports and Sports Stable even going to be interested in something different than what's been proposed? Because aren't they largely dictating what's gone into that facility at this point, and the town's just gone along with it? It's kind of like this idea of Park 3. The developer is going to basically design it, and we just either agree to it or we don't. And if we don't agree to it, they're not going to fund it. Well, isn't this a similar thing where if Impact Sports and Sports Stable don't like what we propose, then they just will withdraw their funding?
But you haven't
option?
proposed anything.
So the design was based off of.
But that's what I'm wondering. Is there even an opportunity for us to propose something different at Impact Sports, or are we just talking about proposing something somewhere else, like Town 15?
So it was only at the last meeting that the trustees said that they think it should be a design. So the design was based off of your March 24th prioritized list, and then followed up by the tour. It was only at the last meeting that the board said, well, if this doesn't work for Impact Sports or the sports stable, they should have a stronger input.
See, I kind of disagree that the design was based on our list, because it only hit a couple items on our list. It didn't hit everything.
Let's see.
It admitted the big ones like senior center,
We had that- we
jog
did-
track.
It did not have the jog track.
Gymnasium. It's like
Many of those amenities are in there, Peter. They're in upstairs on the second floor, so
Well,
that's
they're
where I'm
within
saying
the-
you have
this
to-
is- this
you
is
have
where-
to look carefully at what's
Well,
in the
this,
design.
they're within the sports stable, and you have to have a different level membership to access them, right? So
Mhm.
that's where you start like splitting hairs a little bit. It's like you can say they're there, but are they really there for the use of the town? Or are they there for the use of the sports stable with occasional access to the town?
So Luke Taylor attempted to clarify that in saying that the partnership would allow. So right now, the predominant use is the clubs, because that's who's paying to be in there. That the priority would shift if you had a membership base that was paying to be in there, because the membership would also change how their patrons enter the building. So this membership would apply to their existing base as well. And he said to the board that it wouldn't just be kind of the throwaway time. It would have to be prime ice time and prime turf time, through some kind of, programming piece. So he did clarify that during the meeting.
Okay.
He was also saying that it's part of the business, so I think I wouldn't leave it open to negotiate afterwards, but definitely they seem to be willing to negotiate.
Yeah, and I think that at least that's the direction that staff's been given to work on. So the prioritized list from March: support spaces, building admin space, senior adult lounge, child watch, wet classroom, an additional gym, weight fitness room, 40-person aerobic, dance room, jog walk track, large climbing wall, competitive, leisure pool, aquatic spaces, cafe, and the 160-person meeting room. So, and most of those in that original were accomplished on that second level. And like I said, it was only this past meeting, and I think, at least in my conversations, that the sports stable's always been amendable to that list because it benefits them as well. But what I think we started to hear is these are still very rec-centric, and you had Trustee Lasis and those guys say, all right, this is the opportunity to take a bite out of that list, which PROSTAC is prioritized, which you guys took from the survey. And then, there's this other community opportunity. And you saw at the end of that meeting, the board did start to come around to saying, we're still going to have some level of community space. But yeah, that's, and Susan, am I getting that kind of, I know that you were kind of there.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything on that?
I missed about the last 20 minutes because I had to leave, but there was definitely some strong discussion about what are the actual opportunities for community space in this proposal. And there was a lot of back and forth and debate and tension and everything else. But that to me, that came through fairly clearly from at least several members of the board, that there was a strong interest in understanding what this proposal really could or couldn't do in terms of community space, as opposed to rec center.
Right, so, I for one am confused because from what I've read and what I've seen is the only difference between this opportunity and somebody going to Lakeshore is geographic. It doesn't offer anything additional. Even the potential costs that you showed up there are nearly identical. I mean, nearly identical. So you're offering somebody in the community to to drive potentially 2 miles less if they're located right next to it than that. It doesn't seem to satisfy any other itch other than something that's already available for the same cost. So I don't understand what the benefit to anybody is except for 2 miles closer. I really don't.
So I guess the question I see at this point is there a desire among the majority of the committee members here to propose an alternative, or even more bluntly, to present an opposition to the Impact Sports Stable proposal? And if so, do we want to work on fleshing that out in some type of, presentation to the board? Or is the majority of the committee here satisfied with what's being proposed and there is no desire to work on alternatives?
Right, and I agree with your statement that, if we're going to try to send a message to the board, we send it as a unified group, because otherwise we're just individual residents who happen to be on PROSTAC at the same time individually, and it doesn't give the same strength. And I would say it a little bit differently in the sense that, do we want to send a message sooner to say that based on the, the board meeting from, what was it, January the 8th, that we unifiedly think that the board should consider a broader, a bigger picture, planning picture of this, and that we're working on what that would look like as a board, or sorry, as a committee, to present to them in the near future, that we think that they should hold off on any decision until they see that. Because otherwise, you're, again, if we're not unified, it's just a bunch of individual committee members speaking no different than residents.
And to be clear, my commentary to the board has been as an individual, because I'm not going to speak on behalf of the committee, because we haven't had a joint discussion and agreement on.
And there's nothing from us sending both, right? I mean, if we're passionate enough, we could send it as a unified or in addition to, or even separately as a resident.
I would definitely be interested in working on a competitive option to what's being proposed at Sports Stable. I agree, unified is the best approach. I don't know everybody's,
Or majority, not maybe even unified.
Right. So, but I for sure think it would make a lot of sense to present a competitive option, alternative. And when I say competitive, on the point of the false, for example, it's either this or $35 million.
Right.
I think we could,
Yeah.
right. I think we could maybe work on something that's more competitive and say, hey, this is something that's truly community center for around the same price. Because I do think the Sports Stable option is certainly more of a rec center / gym versus a community center. That's my personal opinion, but that's how I see it. I don't see it as a community center. I see it as a place where sports are held. Yeah, they have a coffee shop and things like that, but I don't think I don't think it's really a true community center, and that's why I'm interested in. I would definitely be interested in working on a competitive option.
And I don't know a single person that I've talked to in the community that ever says, "Hey, let's just go hang out at the sports center."
Yeah, it's
To me,
it's a
that's-
very nice.
Which there are board members who strongly disagree with that sentiment,
Yeah.
but no, I.
But again, that may be geographically based, because I, like you and Doc, we're on that side of town. It's not convenient to just go, "Hey, let's go hang out here."
Yeah. Well, so I guess I would say, show of hands, who would be in favor in working on some type of alternative option to present to the board? So, I mean, that's a simple majority of who's here.
But it's gotta be unanimous, we can't. But my couple things I was gonna say, before you jump the guns. first of all, our entire work plan got rejected by the board last meeting too. So we gotta go back to that again. So I'm just saying, potential tool that we can use to emphasize the fact that we're kind of disappointed. From my seat, I understand.
We can have a
what they're trying
separate
to-
discussion on that if we want, but
But I'm a little
you're right.
disappointed on the fact that they're not gonna even push for the Town 15 concept. That they basically just, my word, I would use it disappointed, not surprised, not mad about it, it's kind of disappointing. And I would actually see if you have the motion, didn't we? We
Yeah,
put a
so that's
motion.
actually what I was just, and I was just,
We
you
put a
guys
motion
have,
to 'em.
you guys have been fairly consistent from the get-go, and as I'm flipping through, even to kind of go back further, this project, the impact partnership stemmed from the Lakeshore. So if you remember, we had kind of even at one point said, well, let me see if I can pull it up. It was a great recommendation.
Well, yeah, I mean, if anything, I would
On
say
Lakeshore.
the unfortunate thing is that after the Lakeshore proposal
It
fell
went straight to
through,
this.
It was
it
a
actually
bandwagon thing. It's a
seemed
bandwagon
like the
thing.
ballot issue had some momentum, and then it was quickly sidetracked by
Yeah.
a single board member's insistence that we look
So-
at this partnership.
Right. So just kind of briefly to kind of recap all the great work that really everybody kind of did, and it actually lends to what Jim's point was. In February, we went back over all the project milestones to 2002 to talk about dedicated indoor community recreation space. The committee discussed if there was enough existing data collected and interest shown by the community to move forward with a citizen engagement process leading towards a future ballot measure. And then we kind of go into the next month. That's when Peter and myself kind of led you guys through the BRS process. Committee reviewed the comprehensive amenity list previously presented by Barker Inker CCAT throughout 2013, 2014, when the board and PROSTAC first showed interest in discussing a future facility. And at the conclusion of the exercise, the group unanimously agreed the following amenities should be included in a future recreation community center. That was kind of that list, right, that we just went over. Moving on into April, it's kind of crazy that we were only dealing with Lakeshore last year. Lakeshore opportunity we had as our top discussion item, discuss the idea of making a recommendation to the board on whether the town should negotiate the purchase of Lakeshore to be used as a community recreation center. And then at that point, all right, the members of the committee unanimously support an expedited process to obtain and/or build an indoor recreation community center that houses the majority of the amenities identified by the committee during their meeting on March 15th. The committee also emphatically supports the board's efforts to explore the feasibility of purchasing Lakeshore Athletic Club as an option to fill the indoor space needs of the community. And if you guys remember, that's what the board had asked at the time is, does this Lakeshore thing make sense? And then really by the time we were in May, let's see. May, we actually talked about budget, which is when we identified, no matter what the process was, is that we needed some funds to have a consultant to help us with an engagement process. And then if you guys remember, by June is when everything kind of changed. So the June recommendation, and this was after you guys were kind of given some direction to chew on this impact deal. The committee reviewed the previous discussions regarding indoor space, and those members in attendance made the following recommendation unanimously to the board for the construction of a community recreation center. PROSTAC recognizes that the residents of the town of Superior desire to have a community recreation center within town limits. The committee is firmly committed to the design and construction of such a facility in the town of Superior to promote and encourage year-round recreation opportunities and provide space for community gathering and events. And then if you guys remember, Peter, you took the bits and pieces to back that up through the survey, and all this was kind of presented to the board. The committee strongly encourages the town board to actively move forward with next steps to accomplish this goal. Next steps should include working with an experienced recreation professional to provide input on the public process necessary to evaluate the design, construction, and operation of a community recreation center, as well as meeting with representatives of existing recreation facilities in neighboring communities. Based on the best information available at this time, PROSTAC envisions that the community recreation center will contain, among other amenities, an indoor aquatics area that includes competitive lap lanes, leisure pool, a gymnasium, an indoor jog walk track, weight fitness room, aerobic dance room, wet classroom, climbing wall, multi-purpose event room with warming kitchens, a child watch area, cafe, senior adult lounge. The needs assessment provided by Barker Inc. or CCAT Architecture in 2013 estimates these amenities will likely amount to a 66,000 square foot building with the cost of $20 million. Once further public engagement is conducted, the town should anticipate the need to retain an architect and request construction bids of contractors. Ron, I think that's the one that you're referring to. And then in order to transform these plans into reality, it should be expected that the town will need to put forth a ballot issue to raise taxes for both the construction of the community recreation center and to sustain general operation and maintenance of the facility. I think that's the one that you're referencing. Yeah. And then you guys had offered yourselves up saying PROSTAC's prepared to undertake the necessary tasks to see a successful community recreation center constructed. And if you remember, Trustee Hansen and Trustee Pennington showed up at the meeting to kind of say, hey, one wanted it this way, one wanted it that way. And then that kind of got onto that next step.
So what I'd like to say is we'll continue this discussion at our next meeting. If it's going to come in front of the board again before that, I will present, in a public comment to the board that PROSTAC would really like to be continually involved and participate going forward, and caution them not to make any decisions before they really include both PROSTAC and revisit all the public engagement done to date. That this needs to be a truly public process, and definitely not just work sessions. I mean, if it's not even an agenda item where there's, as Jim said, there's public comment allowed. And not to mention the fact that when they put it as a work session, they're limiting the time. Whereas if they put it as an agenda item, it's much more open-ended. I mean, granted, they're always going to avoid staying there until, midnight, but if you put it from 5 to 7, you're only going to talk about it from 5 to 7.
It's interesting because to me, if I recall how this thing evolved, there's an old saying that deviation of normalization is standardization, meaning that every time you take a step and then you keep working to that step, and that becomes normal. Then you take another step and you work to the step, right? So the step is that we went from community center to rec center, and now the standardization, the normalization of that is people consider rec center instead of community center, and they latch onto that. Then you take the next step, and it's a quick community center, and so it's just easily to evolve into to deciding on something based on these small steps that you lose the grander sight of what you were trying to do in the first place because of small changes along the way.
I just make I just want to make it clear, I'm not suggesting, it's not my style that PROSTAC as an advisory committee gets into opposition to the board. You're here to serve the board and provide them with information and advice. I'm just saying do that, because in my reading of that 2-hour work session, there were a lot of things in there that were not really true to the process and the information that we've gathered, and you just need to understand that yourself and look for opportunities to make them aware of that. But I will, Peter will remember this, and Patrick, and I guess Sandy too. We hit a stage on Wildflower Park where similar thing. I mean, all of the years of community engagement on that, and PROSTAC had made its recommendations, and there was a point where the board said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We've got input from PROSTAC. We don't need any more. And they went off in I mean, remember? They just changed the thing completely. And I think we had to come back. PROSTAC had to come back and say, whoa, wait a minute. You guys are looking at this. You've got a big agenda. You got a lot of things on your plate, the board, the trustees. And we've lived with this thing for all these years, and you're missing something. You can't just throw out this. Do you realize what you're doing? So, and they came back and essentially went back to the plan that had come out of the process. But they had thrown it out at one, practically thrown it out.
Well, it was only because they ended up with more money than they expected at the end.
Well, I think
which they ended up increasing.
If you guys remember, and we don't have to get into it too much, is we pared it down so much that it had taken all the character out of it.
In it.
And then they said, whoa, all right,
we're spending $2 million on what?
Yeah, we get that we told you to pare it down, but okay, you're right.
Stripped it clean,
and it was PROSTAC saying, whoa.
But you just said something in your recounting the history that came up in the work session also, and I'm hearing references to that the outreach and the things that we've done identify all these needs. What you're doing is the part of the process, particularly the qualitative process, the BRS part, was to screen in ideas, to say, okay, what kinds of things should we think about? And then the rest of that process, and then the quantitative survey was designed to look at the trade-offs, to understand what was important, what was critical, as opposed to what was need to have as opposed to nice to have, and all that sort of thing. And what's happening now, and what happened in that work session, is anything that was screened into that process, people are saying these are needs that were identified. That's wrong. That wasn't what we were doing, and that wasn't the whole purpose. So they've lost all of the judgment that went in. A lot of the judgment came from the community in terms of what was more important and what were the things that were most critical. So
there's nothing on the next agenda, though, right?
I do not.
I got the agenda that's not on there.
No.
Unless it changes.
No, I have not, and I've mentioned this in kind of when Peter and I prepped. So staff has not worked on it because we've started to. We also heard Monday night from the board that pickleball is a huge priority, and skate parks. So we're getting that stuff done. I do have a meeting set up next week with that group, Luke Taylor, Rylan Reed, to kind of do the next iteration. And then you guys have heard me kind of talk about how the schedule gets put together. We've got all these kind of competing interests. Some of those include development applications. Some of them include liquor licenses, and you kind of shuffle things in. But my guess is that this will probably come up in February.
Yeah.
So
right.
we'll give it a
So
crack.
there are two more items I'd like to knock out really quick tonight. So one is the pickleball. So we have previously we've basically narrowed down pickleball locations to 3, potentially 4 locations, being Founders Park, the area north of the South Pool, the area off of East Yarrow and White Raven. And then a fourth potential would be Wildflower Park. We need to hold, as Patrick said, there's strong interest from the board of kind of fast tracking this on our work plan so that it's basically getting constructed in the warm weather months and still potentially used in warm weather months. So we're going to have to hold some type of public engagement to discuss these locations. That's what we need to decide. Do we think we want to do just one meeting to try to knock this out? Do we want to try to do 2 meetings, one for Founders Park and that area, and one for the south of Colton locations? And so we're doing more neighborhood-based focus. Do we want to have a standalone meeting? Do we want to combine it with a PROSTAC meeting like we've been doing more recently with public engagement? So any quick thoughts on that?
So, just out of curiosity, when we submitted the amenities list the last time, I don't recall pickleball being way up
It was
there.
driven by a board member.
I understand it's being driven by a board member, but to me, this is reminiscent of the conversation that we just had. It's very similar to the conversation that we just had, right? In the sense that the board says, again, they had a squeaky wheel, somebody's, one person or a couple people say it over and over again, I want this, and they're trying to solve something quickly, so they put it to the higher priority list. First, I would like for us to just kind of talk real quick as a committee. Do we agree that this is something that should be high priority?
Well, so what I'm going to say is it's in the budget for this year. It's a strong interest of the board. As Jim just said in regards to the indoor space, it's not really the point of the committees to oppose the board. We're here to advise the board. So in this one instance, we may, as individuals or even as a majority of committee members, disagree of whether pickleball is a priority. But at this point in time, it's in the budget. They want to fast track it. So we're here to advise them on it. And what we need to advise them on is location. We're not really here to debate whether or not they should be proceeding with this, because we're already past that point.
I think we could probably advise them on 2 fronts. We advise them, well, we still recommend that this is not a high priority. However, if the board still insists it's a high priority, here's where we did our due diligence, and here's where, we think that, based on community outreach, that it would go.
Sure, we could choose to phrase it like that, but I think it's really the latter half of that we need to focus on at this point, is the public engagement and decision on location. We can always preface it with, we still don't think this is the highest priority,
And it should be
and
considered as part
we
of the larger
caution
plan.
you.
It
We
should be on
caution
the
you.
record. It should be on the record that we don't think that it's the highest priority, even though.
It is on the record.
It is on the record.
Yeah,
We did that.
and we can continue to put it on the record, but I will say, of all the fights that we could have, I don't know that this is one
Yep.
that
I
we should
agree.
really bother with. Because in the long run, it is an amenity that's been on the list. We can potentially knock it out. There's at least one location we could put it, being the East Jar and White Raven, which, to be perfectly honest, if we don't put pickleball there, there's really
Nothing else we
nothing
can
other
do
than
there.
maybe a basketball court that could go there. So it's not like we're all of a sudden removing a location that could have a higher priority amenity. Because you could argue, like, the Founders, the area at the South Pool, those could be better locations for tennis court, skate park, a couple other things. We'll get to the skate park here in a minute when we talk about update items. But if we put pickleball there, we are then saying, okay, we have now removed a prime location for another amenity. Something like East Yard and White Raven, in my opinion, no. You're getting an amenity that really is not removing a location for anything else. So this will be part of our discussion, obviously, when we're looking at location. Right now, we need to do our due diligence in having some type of public engagement.
So you're at a point where we want to bring engagement in first and then send back to the board. We think X location. is
Exactly,
the
we need to
prime
narrow down
Backup
Okay.
location.
a
is this one.
location. We could give them a top three, like we basically have, but really, we should narrow it down to one or two.
So what do we do, and I'm a what-ifer, what do we do if we do the public engagement and the public says, really?
And no one
Well,
shows
then
up.
that's what, then that-
No
that's what
location.
we pass on.
Okay.
But again, it's not really a public engagement on whether or not there should be a pickleball court.
It's the
It's a
location.
public engagement on,
Where?
Where?
we're building a pickleball court.
Where should we put it?
Where do you think is the best location? And we're gonna present the 3-4 locations that we have. And we'll be open for discussion if someone in the public has another location in mind, sure. But we've already thought about basically any location they can go, and, you know, we in large part know those locations better than most residents. So I would say we're pretty safe in the locations we've narrowed it down to, and that should be our focus in any meeting that we hold.
To answer my view on this, agreeing with Peter, is that they've asked us to do it, we need to do it. The one thing we can, like, if you were to put a proposal together, I would vote no against pickleball, just on the record. But that's not for me to say anymore, it's already done. So, but if we have a community engagement and say, these are the 3 places we're gonna put it, you will actually maybe stir up some interest and controversy,
Right.
saying, wait a minute, why are we, I guarantee you 95% of the residents of this town have no idea. They've budgeted almost, what, 175,000 of their tax dollars for a pickleball court.
Yeah.
So it's our responsibility to bring it to the community and say, look, guys, they're doing it. We're gonna have it, and my personal preference is to do it in front of one of our meetings, so we don't
Yeah.
have to.
I agree with that, because I think
Cause
it's
a
also
second-
more neutral, rather than trying to go into the neighborhoods and get
I
that
would
kind
just
of
bring it right
bias. I would
here.
have it right here.
So, yeah,
They're-
and
You know, staff is good about publicizing it, people will show up.
Yeah, just get the
especially-
word out.
Especially when this
The
is
ones
one of the
that buy-
locations.
Can you,
But that's my only recommendation, is Founder's Park has to be one of the 3 locations.
I totally agree that
Is the
the-
cost the same, and will the cost be the same in all of the locations?
No,
no.
no, I think the cost will
I mean,
vary.
I think that's
We should
a
present that then.
relevant topic of
Yep.
discussion that you guys also need to evaluate, because there is only 175,000. If one of the locations costs you 250,000, I think you should think strongly
Right.
about.
Is
You know,
the,
is one location, you know, I mean, I'm just sitting here looking at Founder's Park. It's already level, it's
done.
already,
Yeah.
Yep.
you already got easy, accessible parking. It's, you know, whatever it happens to be. So I would just suggest that you also look into those things, because it's $175,000, and it
Right.
wasn't $175,000 plus another $50,000 if you need to remove sewer
Plus,
pipes,
how many
like we've
courts
now
you-
discovered
how
with
many
the
courts are
skate
you gonna
park.
get for,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
Yarrow
so
and-
just-
and.
yeah,
you know,
well,
think
is
about that
the,
before you move
is
forward
the
here.
White Raven Street project in the budget for this year as well?
I believe White Raven was pulled.
It was pulled,
Mhm.
because, yeah, I mean, that was my thought. If you're linking the two, then you save some budget there, but
Is that
if that's
White
been
Raven?
removed
Mhm.
now.
That's what they call that, White Raven?
It's
Yeah,
removed
White Raven,
since it was
yeah.
removed.
Yeah.
So, and just, so Corey chimed in, having the public engagement will provide the pros and the cons of the courts and the proposed locations, which I think you guys touched on. Then you'll also be able to receive public input about the overall importance. So I just wanted to make sure, since he's chiming in, that I read that
So,
for you guys.
Are we good holding it next month, 6 o'clock, from 6 to 7 before the February meeting?
Be the 21st. February 21st, right? Next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my only comment on this is I like having it here, I like having you doing the outreach. The only thing I would recommend that we consider is that not only we just post it in the normal means, but in the locations, put some kind of
Mhm.
a sign there saying,
Mhm.
there
Yep.
could be a potential thing here.
Yep.
Come talk about it.
in those locations that we're recommending
Yep.
to try to get those folks in that area to come.
Yeah, we've got the flyer boxes. I think that that's been a successful,
That's
totally a
good.
successful tool for us to use.
Well, we really narrowed it down to just 3, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Well, all
those
right,
three
so
are
the
for-
debate would be, do we include Wildflower as a potential location?
As a 4th location.
As a, yeah, a 4th location? Or do we just, again, Wildflower was only completed a little over 12 months ago, and when that was completed, the idea was that we were gonna, one, we did not include a tennis court, which was in there originally, and then now you're looking at putting another court there, but we were gonna leave this buffer between the rear of the Opal Lane homes and the active parts of the park.
Right.
And if you're gonna put a pickleball court in there, you're either going to put it in that buffer zone, or you're gonna greatly remove something like the Great Lawn by putting it there. And so I don't think it should be there, but we can present it. When we talk about the skate park and the update, we are potentially going to talk about the skate park as a potential location in Wildflower as well. And so do we want to actively be talking about Wildflower for 2 amenities, again, both of which are in the budget this year and will hopefully happen this year? And so we want to try to be talking about separate locations in my mind, and not about the same location for 2 different amenities. And it's not like we're choosing between amenities, because we need to find a location for both.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, in my opinion, we rule out Wildflower based on the conversations we had in the past, that we looked at tennis courts, which is basically very similar to pickleball, and there was rationale why we decided not to pull it there, and I think whatever that rationale applies to the tennis courts would apply to pickleball, which is different than a skate park if you're going to consider it, because it's not the same thing as a tennis court or pickleball, and why you poo-pooed it. Doesn't mean it doesn't get poo-pooed for their same reason, but I think if we poo-poo tennis, then we do the same thing for pickleball in that location for the same rationale.
So
But
something,
it would be nice to get the feedback from people.
so something that was brought up, and it may have been internally with staff, and I'll just throw it out there, is there any appetite to repurpose half of one of the existing basketball court at Wildflower? Because we, at least from staff's perspective, we don't ever see it get used, but you guys who are around it may see it get used a little bit more. So that also came up in our discussions of, all right, do you take half of that? But if the court's getting used, I would say absolutely not.
In the view of public comment, I think you're right. I think we have to include it, even though I don't know if I'd be in favor of it either. But I think, when you start talking about the 2 amenities here, we're talking about the skate park. I mean, the skate park seems like a natural fit for this house, for the pool area. That's where it is right now. Right?
Well,
the
near
temporary one.
Wildflower,
But-
near the school,
Yeah.
another choice.
So again, I think,
Well,
when we always talk about public, we like to have options, so I think, I'm not against having it as a 4th option, even though it's kind of a,
Okay.
Now,
Here, do you
are
want me
the
to go
other-
over
But
the?
at some point,
Are
you
the
have
other
to, at
three-
some point, you draw the line on what
Right.
is an option and what is not the option, and you have to make that decision. So something's always going to get ruled out. and it
I
just-
almost wonder if we don't present it as an official option, but definitely include it in topics of discussion. Like if the public starts saying, well, are those the only 3 choices? We can say, we've looked at these other locations, and we can discuss it more openly, open-ended discussion, rather than
I just.
actually
I think-
present it as an
I
option.
just think if we're gonna have founders, we gotta have Wildflower.
Now,
That's my opinion.
are the other 3 options, founders, the Yarrow and the third one, are real options? Are they within the budget? Because
Well,
that's
I
another
mean,
thing.
that hasn't been fully vetted, because it's not like they've done surveying, they haven't done, the soil samples. We know that they're probably gonna have some soil issues at the south pool, even though it's relatively level and everything. If it's the same soil that's under the skate park on the other side of the pool, we know we're probably gonna have soil issues. Whereas we know that both Wildflower and Founders have had soil work done, more so at Wildflower, but they've had soil work done because they were developed parks relatively recently. And so hopefully that means that if we did them there, you're gonna dodge that bullet. White Raven is essentially untouched. Depending on how much you had to do to the lot, it could be more expensive. At the same time, it's pretty small. If you're only putting one cord on it, it's really gonna come down to what's the soil like. Because they're really, if you're just putting one quart, it's actually relatively level. You shouldn't have to be doing a lot of earthwork unless you're doing a lot of soil prep. And my thought was, if you combine it with White Raven, you're basically creating your parking lot when you remove the street. I mean, they're gonna have to do, sidewalk work and all this stuff when they take the street out. But if we can't combine them, then yes, you're looking at some extra work potentially there, because you gotta create like a little parking area. And so anyway,
Well, I
they're
guess what I'm
not
thinking-
all oranges. We're not,
Yeah.
they're all gonna have their own potential pros and cons.
I guess what I'm trying to see is if we have really three options, or is just, okay, well, that's gonna be so expensive that it's not really an option, then we should bring something else, for sure. Because you don't want
I
to
get
be
you.
bringing people here like, okay, let's do this again and again and again,
No, I don't know. I mean, I think the public comment is going to be valuable independent of cost discussion. So if we have the comment, the public engagement, and there's a strong, favoring of each site based on location, and then all of a sudden we find out, oh, well, choice A costs too much, we at least know what choice B is.
Yeah.
And we will, and if we have to defend ourselves to the public of, well, I was at the public engagement and everyone really liked, White Raven first, why did you build it at Founders? We would come back and say, well, at further look, it was too expensive, and we had to build it at the economical choice.
And my only other comment, to be just to try to wrap it up, is February too soon? Do we need to put it on March?
Well, that's more the issue of the board wanting it to be ready to go by warm weather. So if we wait till March, that doesn't give
Yeah, I don't
much
think we should
time
wait.
for the town to go out to bid and everything on the project. If we figure out a location, the board basically rubber stamps it, assuming the board has to rubber stamp the location. Then, the staff is gonna put it out, to bid. And that's gonna take a month or two. So you're talking, if we choose a location, get the board to approve it by, say, the end of February, you're talking April before you could even break ground.
I
at the earliest.
definitely got the sense Monday that there was an urgency to get it going.
The board just, you guys had it in the second quarter,
Right.
which
Yeah, and then-
says you're not gonna do it until the end of June.
Yeah.
And the board asked that it be moved up, so that they didn't say you have to get it done in February. They just said, please move it up to the first quarter, at least to start your engagement process. So, because starting it in June would, if you wait until the end of June,
Well,
there's no way it would get done.
I'll take
And
a look when we're putting the agenda together. But I would say February is probably better.
I was more worried about your competitors.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we could, we're prepared to get working on it pretty hard and heavy and could advertise it out. So either February or March, I think we could probably make that work pretty easily.
All right. So I'm just gonna say on project teams, rather than really try to hash this out, just think if anyone wants to work on any special projects this year. I know the one that we seemed pretty much committed to this year was some type of like events team, because we felt like what Corbett worked on last year with like the bike rides was relatively successful, and we thought that that could be hashed out maybe a little bit better to even make it a better turnout than it had.
And I think it got more and more successful as we learned and figured
Yeah.
out better ways to involve the folks. And by the last one, I think it was the most successful.
Yeah, and then maybe we have an opportunity to think of some similar type events. So that would be one team. So if anyone thinks they might be interested in that at the next meeting, volunteer for it. And then if there's any other, if there's any other items that anyone's really interested in that you think you would want to work on outside, between committee meetings, and there might be another one or two members interested in it as well, propose that at the next meeting. I mean, like one that we've had is the master plan, and honestly, it's too much of a beast. I think that's only going to get done if it gets put in as a budget item and a consultant's hired to do it. I mean, Corey and I have both barely cracked that nut and realized how much time it's going to take. So, I mean, we could consider still having it as like a project team this year, but I don't know if it's going to go anywhere without, some real muscle behind it.
Is there any kind of budget to go, I mean, like even a simple budget to go with some kind of project team? Because one of the things that
We have $5,000 now for the committee to
Yep.
kind of like a discretionary.
Like a petty cash type thing?
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've done in the past, but
Mhm.
I consider doing it again, is set up a temporary orienteering course,
Yeah.
And it's very
Sorry,
simple.
what
It's
was
just
that?
Orienteering.
Orienteering.
So I used to teach orienteering in
Mhm.
the past, and it's a good way to, it's kind of like your passport, but a little
Yeah.
bit different, but, you have
Love
flights
it.
set up and you can do an event, and it's relatively inexpensive, but it's, a lot of the schools get involved in it too, because the JROTCs are very involved in orienteering.
Yeah.
But that would be something that could be easily put on as a kind of one person or two people can organize that a day thing and, create a map and whatever.
So each
So you're talking about like compass, like
Map and compass.
yeah.
Yep.
So each committee this year has $5,000 to do essentially some programmatic stuff in public outreach based upon what that mission and charter is. So even if you, let's say you guys wanted to add something or to the engagement on pickleball, I mean, so keep that in mind that there is some funds available to bolster things up that the committees are doing, whether it's giveaways or hiring a little bit of support or getting some equipment. So, yeah, that's a good reminder.
All right. So moving on to updates, look ahead. I guess we don't have a date for the dinner with the board. At this point, I think that the two topics are really going to be indoor space and then potential alternate locations for skate park. So to quickly summarize the skate park, the soils report is crap, and now it looks like
Yep.
there's like a sewer line
All right.
like right under it.
So here's existing site. We did the soils report. Came back about like what you guys expected, in town, which is they want us to over excavate about 4 feet. And then they made the recommendation in the soils report that we needed to go down 20 foot
Oh my
with
God.
piers. And we said, all right. I mean, that's excessive. But if you guys have been to Wildflower Park, you know that even on top of all the work that we did in Wildflower, we're still getting breaking concrete almost weekly. So it's still moving a ton over there. So we said, all right, we think we could deal with that. Let's start potholing for some locates. And we found right here, about 2 feet off the curb, there's an Excel gas line. There's a 46-inch drain pipe that goes right here, and all of the electrical that runs the pool, and it looks like a huge 1,000-watt electrical line that looks like it runs most of the south part of town, all runs right here. So you would lose almost your entire budget if we keep it at this location. So one of the things we talked about is we could look at doing something over here. You're likely to have the same soils, which were probably the spoils from when they dug this out, or the spoils from when they dug the basements, is what we're starting to find in a lot of areas. And then we just kind of had the discussion of, you're really taking this thing from what was a neighborhood skate park to a community feature.
Right.
And does Wildflower lend itself to adding a feature over, we've got kind of the Great Lawn, could you do something like that? Or is there another location that would be worth looking at? We were trying to come up with keeping it as close to those neighborhoods as possible because they've been the strongest advocates for it. But I could say with some certainty here that unless we did everything like just slab and did surface mounted stuff, this location right here, if we do any upgrades and go into the ground, we're losing our entire budget.
Yeah.
So here I think is an option. We'd probably still have some soils prep work to do, or you look at doing something at Wildflower, which maybe already has the infrastructure, and we maybe don't have to do as much soil prep. So I just want to make you guys aware of it. We've made the board aware of it in the digest.
You have other potential, like founders could be, but then you're talking about taking what was a feature
Right.
south of Colton, moving it all the way up there in original town.
Yeah, Peter had the great recommendation of maybe down by the bike park. So who knows? But staff was trying to keep it south of Colton, just being sensitive to we do still hear a lot that the town favors north of Colton. And we've received a ton of comments from the neighbors surrounding that skate park when we took it out that we were really negatively impacting that part of town by removing an amenity. So,
and then it doesn't sound like most of you saw the work session last week for the indoor discussion, so you might not have seen the work plan discussion, but when the board decided to basically combine the PROSTAC and OSAC work plan discussion together, it all got ripped to shreds. The majority seemed to be upset with the OSAC work plan, but there was some disagreement over items on the PROSTAC work plan. So basically the committees were told to go back, sit down with Patrick, the town manager, and review the work plan and then bring it back to the board. So that's what we were going to meet today, but Manager Magley wasn't available at the last minute. So
Did they give any guidance on what they didn't like?
So with the PROSTAC work
Is it
plan,
bringing another rock?
so it's basically overlap items, and that's what that's where we've had these what's essentially now becoming like little infights with us and OSAC is items where we disagree over who really should be talking about it, and the primary overlap is obviously open space and trails, since OSAC has really kind of nosed their way into talking about trails more and more. So as far as items on they ripped OSAC's work plan, and there were some things on there that their board members were just really upset about, and unfortunately PROSTAC just kind of got lumped in there, because really, the only thing on our work plan that really got mentioned specifically was the Boulder County open space recommendation that we make every year along with OSAC. And there was some question of, well, this is, we're making a recommendation to Boulder County open space. Why is OSAC not just handling this? Why don't you remove it from PROSTAC's plan? I would make the argument of, sure, you could have OSAC make the recommendation on the open space, but there's also a trails recommendation as part of that. And that would be a mistake to remove PROSTAC, the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee, to make recommendations on trails, let alone open space. I mean, they are both in our purview. So the board really is the ones that should be making that call, but at this point, we're supposed to be kind of working out ourselves. But for the most part, PROSTAC's work plan is largely a holdover from last year. We didn't add a lot of new stuff, with the exception of some discussion of Riverbend Park, but a lot of its continuation items were not, in my opinion, overreaching. So we'll sit down with staff and talk about it, but if anyone wants to look at the work plan and comment, offline to me, sure, go ahead and do that. But I don't think we have to have a real open discussion about it at this point, because there's not that much for us to remove. Unless staff really has an opinion otherwise, and then we'll bring it back. I'm guessing we're going to have to bring it back to
Correct.
the committee. Me and potentially Corey can't just sit down with staff and then put it back to the board.
Right.
We have to bring it back to the committee. So
Correct.
we're going to talk about it again.
Yep.
For those who didn't watch it, there was a big discussion again, came up about merging the committees, so
Well, I mean,
why do we have two?
And I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm looking at all the stuff that we work, right, over, and how much of each of it takes our time, and I'm thinking, well, the open space part of it, even if you added to it, I mean, it's mono-subject.
Yeah. I think it's coming, I think the merger's coming, I just don't know when they're gonna do
It just seems like that there's not a whole lot of content, especially as if there's a whole lot of open space to think about, then there's a lot of content. As you whittle it down, and over the time, as more of it becomes open space, it becomes less content because there's less stuff to talk about.
Right.
Yeah, and that, again, we tried to kind of work that out ourselves with OSAC. I thought we were on the same page at some point early last year. Finally went to the board in the second half of the year. Going into the meeting, I honestly thought the majority of the board members were in favor of it, but then when the OSAC chair got up there and disagreed, thought that it was a bad idea, everyone piled on and said, no, we're not going to do this. So whether the board has the appetite to have this discussion, Ron's right, it was definitely brought up on last Monday, and maybe that's what they'll decide to do, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be decided before we have to approve our work plans. So we still need to work through the work plans now, and maybe in a few months it comes back as to whether the committees get merged, and all that becomes a moot point. But right now, we'll sit down with staff, have a slightly revised work plan that we'll have to approve probably next meeting. Yeah. All right. I mean, we've gone long, so I think we're good till next month. So, meeting adjourned.
Old days. Still got every 4 times, though, that's good sign.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly don't know if a lot of you that are only been here for, 9 months or whatever, have at least, you've been out by 9 most meetings.
I thought that was the norm, so we
We used to go
meet-
like to 10, like all the time.
We used to cut it off at 10.
Oh.
Well, supposed to cut it off at 9:30.
Right, 9:30.
We were supposed to vote on whether we continue past 9:30.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to send me that letter that you sent to the board about the indoor space?
Sure.
I'm just curious about it, 'cause I heard they mention it, and I was the first thing about it, so.
Is he in?
This Sunday.
Sure, yeah,
Thank you.
I'll send it.
Because it was sent to the board, it's public information. So-
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't realize that, I didn't.
Anything
Is
that's
it
sent to the
actually?
board is public.
Is it posted?
So Sandy, is it actually put
But
somewhere?
it can be
And he's there on the weekends?
All right, sure.
Probably.
Okay, well, I just, requesting it from person to person, whatever.
Yeah, no, that's fine, but it's no big deal.
Okay.
So I'll have to actually, I'll probably end up chatting with Manager Magley and our attorney to see what, because right now I legally can't have him leave. We would have to actually have a policy that would say you legally cannot be here. But what we could potentially do is try to put something together that says he can't operate a business up there.
And then a couple of weeks when Joshua came here, that was a different one. And that one, they know him because I think he's gonna run the fitness thing, the tennis program in the new lakeshore. What's the name?
Lifetime.
So people know him more. I think someone told me that his name is Jim.
And I think where we run
But
into is
it's kind of like,
we
he
need
was
to.
there like 40 minutes, 40 minutes before with his guitar and 2 baskets of balls just to get the chord.
Right.
Really, they already told you that you're not supposed to.
Yeah, and I will say we run into that on our baseball fields too. So I think, and the other thing we'll probably need to figure out is if he was there with residents.
Apparently someone told him, another tennis person told me that someone told him also, and another time someone told him something and said that he's teaching a resident. Now the other day definitely he had 2 lessons. Probably they were 2, I don't know, they might have been 2
Well,
lessons,
the one thing
but-
I will say we're going to propose to the board next year is that we reinstitute charging. So if you want to rent the court, we could do that, and then at least the town would recoup. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
so.